remember, when about was that?
What did I say? It was back in July of '94.
So did you know Mr. Fennell before he met Stacy Stites?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall how Mr. Fennell met Stacy Stites?
I don't know that I can tell you that because I don't know exactly how I know.
Do you have any family members in law enforcement?
Yes, sir.
Who are they?
Excuse me?
Who is in law enforcement in your family?
Objection, Your Honor. I'm not sure why this is relevant.
Let me ask you this question. Did Mr. Fennell know other members of your family that were in law enforcement?
Yes, he did.
And I believe you testified that you and Mr. Fennell worked together in the jail?
Yes, sir.
Did you do similar work there together?
I'm sorry?
Did you do similar work there together, or did you have different functions?
No, we did similar work together. Yeah.
And were you also in a police training together?
Yes, we were.
I'm going to ask you to turn to tab 1 in the binder in front of you. And if you look at a page, and I'll put it up on this projector here, it's on the bottom, it says 2 of 4.
Mm-hmm.
And first off, at the bottom of this, can you identify your signature?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Move it over a little bit. I'm looking at it. It's the same
Yeah.
piece of paper.
And do you remember making this affidavit, executing this affidavit?
Say it again?
Oh, this document, do you remember this document?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So if you can take a look, and I've got it up here on the screen, starting with Jimmy Fennell. It says there, Jimmy Fennell was my best friend.
Your Honor, I object to reading off a document that's not been edited.
Was Jimmy Fennell your best friend?
Yes, he was.
Would you describe, at least at the time of 1996, would you have told somebody you felt like brothers with Jimmy Fennell?
Yes, I would.
Did you and did Jimmy Fennell confide in you?
Confide in me.
Did he share a lot of private thoughts with you?
Yes, he did.
And were you supposed to be his best man at his wedding?
Yes, sir.
And were you friendly with Stacy Stites as well?
Yes, I was.
And were your family and his family friendly?
My family and Jimmy were.
And, as well as Stacy Stites?
Yes.
Was anybody in your family going to be a part of Jimmy Fennell and Stacy Stites' wedding?
Yes, they were.
And who was that?
That would be my daughter.
Now, you spoke to an attorney representing Mr. Reed in the past few months. Is that true?
Yes, I did.
And was that
And that gentleman sitting right there.
and yeah, let the record reflect he's identified Quincy McNeil.
That is true.
Now, when you spoke to him, did you tell him the truth?
I sure did.
You talked to anybody with the Attorney General's office or the Bastrop County District Attorney's office about this matter?
About
just in the last 3-4 months?
yes.
And where was that conversation? Where did it take place?
The conversation with the DA's office?
Yeah.
It was on my phone.
Oh, okay. Did you talk to anybody with the Attorney General's office?
Yes, I believe an assistant, yes, sir.
And was that in person or on the phone?
Phone.
Did they tell you that they were recording what you said?
No, they didn't.
Did they
No
tell
phone
you?
call there.
Did they tell you they were taking notes?
Nope, no, sir.
Can you turn to tab 2 in the binder in front of you? And for the record, tab 2 is a document that on the top of it says DRS Productions Death Row Stories, interview with Curtis Davis, and it appears to be a typewritten transcript. It is 63 pages. Is that what you're looking at?
Yes, sir, I have that.
Have you seen this document before?
In its entirety, not until yesterday.
So you saw this yesterday?
Yes, sir.
Did you read it?
I read at it.
Okay. Was there anything in this document that you saw that you thought that was inaccurate?
Nothing I saw. I do recall possibly made a comment that I didn't give any kind of statements or written statements or something like that. I couldn't remember if I had or not.
But aside from that, everything that you've read in this document, in your mind, accurately reflects what you told the CNN before?
Accurate reports what I said, yes, sir.
And so, this document here, this is a transcript of your interview with a CNN reporter, is that
Yes, sir,
correct?
I recognize that.
How did that interview get set up?
I was approached by CNN to talk to them regarding this matter. Excuse me.
And what did, if you remember, why did you agree to do this interview?
I was asked to give my opinion on how I felt about the whole Rodney Reed and Stacey Dykes and Jimmy Fennell situation.
And was it your intent to be truthful when you talked to the CNN reporter?
Yes, sir.
And it was your intent to be accurate?
It was.
And it was your intent to be detailed?
That was my intent.
Now, would you describe yourself as a careful person?
I'd like to think so, yes, sir.
So if you don't know something, would you generally make it known that you don't know something?
Generally.
So can you turn to page 32 of the document transcript?
$32?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And if you look down about quarter of the way down, you see mail number 1.
Yes, sir.
And if you look up, let's see, 1, 2, 3. So third line from the bottom there. Do you see where it says, "But every day I can't answer that because I don't know for a fact that's true"? Do you see that?
On page 32?
Yeah, 32 of 63. I'll put it up on the screen.
Your Honor, I'm not sure why it's up on the screen if he has a copy displaying documents that are not in evidence.
So I can point it out.
Okay.
So do you see that last line there where my pen is? I can't answer that because I don't know for a fact that's true.
I do see that.
Okay. Is that an example of you identifying where you don't know something?
If I don't know something, yes, sir.
So if you don't know something, you'd say something?
Generally, yes, sir.
Now, have you thought that a lot of the attention to the Rodney Reed case was fair in the media?
I'm not sure whether this is relevant, Your Honor.
I can't hear the question.
Oh, well, let me ask you this. Have you seen a lot of media about the Rodney Reed case?
Over 24 years, yes, sir.
In your opinion,
20.
Do you think that media has been fair?
Your Honor, I'm not sure whether it's relevant.
Was the reason you did this CNN interview to set the record straight, to make sure that things were correct?
Based on my knowledge of correct, yes, sir.
And was it your understanding that the approach to the CNN interview was to present accurate and truthful information?
I think asked and answered, Your Honor.
That's over.
Repeating?
Oh, was it, did you understand the purpose of this CNN documentary in your interview as an opportunity to present correct and accurate information?
That's the way it was presented to me, yes, sir.
And when given the opportunity to present correct and accurate information about the case, was it your response that you were up for that?
Yes, sir, it was.
Now, has the Stites murder, the murder of Stacey Stites, been difficult on you personally?
Yes.
And has that been difficult on your family?
Yes.
Was it your intent in any way in doing this interview to assist Mr. Reed in his defense of his case?
In defense of his case?
Yes.
No, sir, it was not.
In fact, was it your intent to do just the opposite of it?
My intent was to give the side of the story that I didn't think was being given.
So I'm going to ask you to turn to page 31 of 63. And actually, let's back up to 30. And just anticipating the state's objection, what I plan to do is read this and have Officer Davis, is Officer the correct
Officer,
title?
Mr.
Affirm that this was his truthful statement.
I don't believe that that's permissible cross, or it sounds like cross-examination. It's not permissible direct examination.
That's the thing.
So on the morning of April 23rd, did you see Jimmy Fennell?
Yes, I did.
And where was that?
What time, what year are we talking?
Oh, I'm sorry, 1996. Oh, so let me clean that up then. On the morning of April 23rd, 1996, did you see Jimmy Fennell?
Yes, I did.
And where did you see him?
The first time I saw him?
Yeah.
It was in the break room of our sheriff's office here.
And did you spend some time with him there in the sheriff's office?
Yes, sir.
Did you go anywhere with him subsequent to seeing him there in the sheriff's office?
All day long.
So you were with him all day?
Yes.
Did you go out to take a look at his truck?
Yes, sir.
And where did you go after that?
I believe that we went back to his apartment in Giddens.
And what was the purpose of you going back to his apartment?
Just to be comfort, assist in helping him make it to what seemed to be a very, very difficult time for both him and me.
And while you were there at the apartment with Mr. Fennell, did you have a conversation about the events of the night before?
We did talk about the night before.
And so, did he tell you that he felt some blame for allowing her to drive to work that morning?
Yes.
Here's Your Honor.
Yes, thank you.
Move to strike the answer.
Your Honor, respecting your, I am not sponsoring Mr. Fennell's statements for the truth of the matter, sir. In fact, the whole point of this hearing is that Mr. Fennell has not been truthful. We are certainly not arguing to this court that Mr. Fennell went out drinking with his buddies and then peaceably came home asleep and went to sleep and then saw Stacy Stites gone. What we are arguing to the court is that Mr. Fennell has not been.
All right, everybody, we are getting a live update in California on the Napa Valley area.
Yes, sir.
And if you look up, let's see, 1, 2, 3, so third line from the bottom there, do you see where it says, but every day I can't answer that because I don't know for a fact that's true? Do you see that?
On page 32.
Yeah, 32 of 63. I'll put it up on the screen.
Your Honor, I'm not sure why it's up on the screen if he has a copy displaying documents that are not in evidence.
So I can point it out.
Okay.
So do you see that last line there where my pen is? I can't answer that because I don't know for a fact that's true.
I do see that.
Okay. Is that an example of you identifying where you don't know something?
If I don't know something, yes, sir.
So if you don't know something, you'd say something.
Generally, yes, sir.
Now, have you thought that a lot of the attention to the Rodney Reed case was fair in the meeting?
I'm not sure whether this is relevant, Your Honor.
I can't hear the question.
Oh, well, let me ask you this. Have you seen a lot of media about the Rodney Reed case?
Over 24 years, yes, sir.
In your opinion,
20 years.
Do you think that media has been fair?
Your Honor, I'm not sure whether it's relevant.
Was the reason you did this CNN interview to set the record straight, to make sure that things were correct?
Based on my knowledge of correct, yes, sir.
And was it your understanding that the approach to the CNN interview was to present?
Reasons. It's actually gone really well for us. We had very few calls of any problems last night, and we have made no arrests, no looting, no problems like that. So it's been very well. I think it's because of the number of police that are in the area. I actually don't know that they didn't. I will tell you this was so fast that most people did. There wasn't a lot of notice for a lot of people, but I don't know that they didn't get the. We were sending out SOCO alerts and different messages all over the county.
Sheriff, can you kind of describe the transition that a lot of deputies went through? I mean, you guys are primarily a law enforcement agency. That's what deputies are used to doing. Busting the bad guy, to transitioning to basically rescue, evacuation. Well, was that a tough transition, or how did that?
No, deputies are built to arrest the bad guy, as you say, but we also are asked by society to do many, many other things. So this is just one of the many ways we do public safety. Evacuations are part of the job sometimes. So very versatile.
Do you know how many other agencies are helping you come out of the area?
Yesterday there were 20. I would assume there's close to that today.
Do you have any idea on a number of how many extra people?
We have roughly 200 people on the street right now in this county that are from outside agencies.
Is there a curfew in place tonight?
Santa Rosa put a curfew in place. We basically told you don't come into our evacuated areas.
Are you guys extending more the parameter of where people shouldn't be with this fire?
No, anything that's been evacuated or burned is what we have closed. Well, let me rephrase that. There are areas where we've still done evacuations as recently as this morning, so it's expanded there. There are areas that haven't changed at all.
So what do you say to the people who are sitting somewhere evacuated and they want desperately to come home to know if their homes are okay? What is your message to them?
Please be patient. Life is more important than property. Bear with us while we work through this. We want to keep people safe. That is the number one thing. And it just takes time to put that together. You've heard the kind of resources we have in the county. It's still a huge event. This is an enormous fire.
Do you have any information on the evacuation centers, how full they are?
I do not.
With how fast this fire is moving or has been moving, do you expect more evacuation orders?
I sure hope not, but I know as early as this morning they were still doing some more movement. So it wouldn't surprise me because I understand it's not under control.
Sheriff, did you have to evacuate the jail?
We did not. We were prepared to do that. Alameda County was gracious enough to send us several buses, and the fire did get us close to the main office that we actually almost evacuated this building and almost had to evacuate the jail, but the fire put a line up for us and kept us in so we could work from there.
What about your own home? Is that a little different?
I'm very fortunate. Unfortunately, my home is fine, but I would estimate at least 20 employees have lost their homes, 20 employees of the sheriff's office. Many of them I found out about the night the fire broke out because they were coming off the hill evacuating people and telling me they lost their homes. So they were working through the middle of it.
Do you know how many people were evacuated by this time?
I'm sorry, I don't know how many people were evacuated. Yeah.
Have officers been searching structures for human remains?
There is some searching going on. There's still hot spots. We're responding to calls and concerns at houses. I know some of them come up just because someone was at a place and called us and we ended up finding a body there. So that has been part of it, but we're starting to put together search teams to methodically do that.
Have you heard about flare-up in the Oakmont neighborhood?
This morning I heard it, or I guess it was last night I heard it was burning in the Oakmont area.
I'm updated numbers of structures, homes.
I have no numbers on structures and homes, I'm sorry.
Sheriff, as far as the fatalities go, I mean, how soon do you think you'll be able to release identities on them, or what are the difficulties in identifying
idea how long it's going to take us to get that done, but I would say it's going to be weeks till we get through most of that.
I know a lot of
Say
this
to
is
folks out there if they're looking to help out in the community.
Donate to the Red Cross. Take care of your neighbors.
A lot of this is speculation, but the death toll, do you expect it to climb significantly, minimally? I mean, what do you think there?
I'm very happy that we found 57. I also know how big this is and how much is burned, and I expect there may be a couple.
How has this fire hampered your normal operations?
We are only responding to priority 1, as they call them calls. So law enforcement emergencies right now, this is our main focus.
This morning, the Vice President announced from Sacramento that the President approved a disaster declaration for the state of California. Do you know how soon help might come to your department and what that might actually look like?
Actually, what that does for us is financial assistance. We already have the National Guard here. We have multiple outside law enforcement agencies, Office of Emergency Services. The resources, CAL FIRE, everybody, we have excellent resources. Those declarations will give us the funding to pay for all that.
Do you know how soon you might get an influx of funding?
Oh, that takes time usually, but that's okay. The fact that it's coming is important to us.
What's the National Guard doing?
National Guard is supplementing our troops, so some of the people on the street are National Guard's people. So they bring in resources, but mostly people, just like other agencies. So they can do search teams with us. They have other resources like dogs, things like that.
Yeah, yesterday, Office of Emergency Services said that disasters like Harvey and Irma have not, because we've sent a number of resources out of state, haven't affected the amount of resources that we have here to be able to help just kind of share throughout the area. I'm just wondering what your experience is with that. Have you seen a number of different teams? You mentioned the National Guard.
I can speak more to the law side because I'm not involved with what Fire's getting. Fire seems to have a lot of resources.
And that looks like they just took away that press briefing on us. And there it is.
Rotating them. So same for the outside agencies. We bring them up for 12 hours, send somebody home for 12 hours. So we turn people away so that as the week goes on, we can keep running those kind of numbers, and that's what we're doing right now.
Just real quick, can you say and spell your name?
I'm sorry, I forgot in the very beginning, didn't I? It's Robert Giordano. It's Giordano. I promise, and then I lied.
And it's just you want to go by Rob?
Rob, yeah, I'm sorry, I spelled it. Let's go by Rob. Rob Giordano. Giordano.
Your title?
I'm sorry?
Your title?
Sheriff.
Okay.
And you're in charge of coroner's office as well?
Yes, Sheriff Coroner here in Sonoma County.
Has he recovered bodies?
Yes, we have.
Is that the number of bodies you gave?
8 of 9.
8 of 9?
All in the burned areas, right?
Yes, these are in burned areas, fire-related deaths.
Can you give any indication of the circumstances? I mean, there's people who died of, auto accidents or some people.
There's a yes and a no.
Please explain.
I was in the audience on the first day, and I was removed or asked to step aside because I was on the district attorney's list for possible witnesses, and so I never got to sit in on the rest of the trial.
So, you did not hear Jimmy Fennell testify then?
No, no, sir.
And at the time that that you gave the CNN interview, did you know what Jimmy Fennell had testified to?
No, I did not.
And Your Honor, I'm happy to run him through what Jimmy Fennell testified to, or we can, it is part of the record in this case.
It's part of the record.
Yeah, so.
You got a transcript of everything he said.
Yeah, and so the judge can take notice of the fact that Jimmy Fennell testified at the trial that he was at a baseball practice and that he comes home Stacy's still awake, that they go upstairs together, and that they take a shower at one point, according to Mr. Fennell's testimony, that he rubs her back, according to Mr. Fennell's testimony, that they were not sexually intimate that night, according to his testimony, that Stacy Stites went to sleep around, I believe, 9 o'clock or so, according to his testimony, and that he went to sleep an hour or so later after watching a TV show about lightning, and according to his testimony at the trial. And I think the judge should take notice of that.
And I have read that previously and do take notice.
Okay. Now, Officer Fennell, what?
No, that's a different officer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Not objecting to the favorable ruling, at least. Officer Davis,
Yes.
you just heard me recite what Jimmy Fennell's testimony was. What Jimmy Fennell.
Objection, Your Honor. That, I mean, he's
Let's
reciting from
rephrase that
memory.
question, all right? That's the same.
Was what Jimmy Fennell told you that afternoon that you just described consistent with what we just talked about in terms of the testimony that the judge took notice?
Objection, Your Honor. Again, he's using a recitation.
That's the same. Why don't you ask him what he told CNN?
All right.
Get there.
So what did you tell CNN that Jimmy Fennell told you that afternoon?
Well, it's already documented in the transcript, so it's kind of hard to get away from. However, you know, what I basically said was that he had attended some kind of baseball practice from that night before, and that he came home. And because he came home, I was asked the next question. The next question was, what time? And almost, I had to think about it because I really didn't know. He never told me an exact time that they came home. But in my mind, because my granddaughters play in the same baseball league over there in Giddings, I did a time allotment in my head, and they don't get home till 9 o'clock at night, and immediately I thought 10, 11 o'clock, 20 years after the fact. So that's where that answer came from.
And did you tell CNN that Jimmy told you that Stacy was already asleep when he came home?
It's obviously, if it's in the transcript and it says I said it, I did say that. But did he tell me that?
All right, everybody, we are going to take you out to Washington, where General McMaster's is holding a conversation
with the Hill. But what we've attempted to do at the National Security Council is to have meaningful conversations with senators and congressmen and staffers about our key policy initiatives and early in the development of what we're calling our integrated strategies. So we have found that's immensely helpful because, first of all, a lot of the problems that we're facing require legislative remedies, and all of them require resources. So I think our emphasis has been, in relation to your question, on early consultation from the NSC, but obviously continued coordination between the departments, the relevant departments, and the Hill and the relevant committees.
Jim and Steve, each of you had administrations that had somewhat contentious relations with the Congress. How does this issue, because they would obviously want to know what you're saying and what you're thinking, but you have an obligation to the president to be his advisor. Jim, how about you?
Well, I think the most important thing is that for the National Security Advisor and the NSC is to, on matters of national and international security, to project an image of bipartisanship. And in my relationship with President Obama, I asked him for that latitude to resist putting a political spin on big issues until such time as those issues have been developed. I mean, obviously, it's a political decision. during my time, which followed Steve, we decided to combine Homeland Security and National Security into one staff, and that was a big difference in terms of the size of the staff. But I think the bipartisan approach is extremely important. In my military career, I had the good fortune of spending a few years on Capitol Hill, and as a Marine liaison officer, and my motto was always do for the majority what you do for the minority and vice versa. And then I found out when I became National Security Advisor that all of a sudden I was a Democrat, and I didn't know I was. And you know, you have to get through that, and you can only get through that by working at it and by making sure that you reach out to both sides, and I think that's extraordinarily important on security issues.
Well, of course, the National Security Advisor is not confirmed by the Senate, does not testify on the record before Congress. But I, like I'm sure all my predecessors, spent a lot of time consulting informally up on the Hill, briefing, explaining policies, and all the rest. It's an important part of the job. I learned everything I know about being National Security Advisor from the man who's in the front row here, Brent Scowcroft. And one of the things, I worked for him when he was National Security Advisor the first time. But we served together on the Tower Commission, and one of the most important things about the Tower Commission, which was established by President Reagan in 1986 in the wake of the Iran arms sales, was to stave off an effort by the Congress to basically take over the national security structure, required the National Security Advisor be confirmed, set the number of people, set the organizational structure. And Brent led the charge to frustrate that effort, because it's not just an issue of privacy, it's an issue of separation of powers. If the president cannot gather around him or her a staff of people in which he or she can have great confidence, then the president is not going to be able to carry out the constitutionally prescribed roles for the president in foreign policy, where the president has a lot of roles and a lot of leadership. So it's a fundamental constitutional principle that needs to be observed. And it is always subject to struggle, because in times of war, presidents get more power. In times when presidents seem to get in trouble, the Congress takes it back. So tension we'll always have. But it's very important for the institution of the presidency to preserve that group that is able to support the president in their constitutional role.
Henry, nobody had a boss that had more difficult relations with the Congress ultimately than Richard Nixon. I mean, how did you balance your obligations to be his advisor, but also the accountability to the Congress?
Well, the question of accountability arises in two ways. One, how the Congress can control the main lines of policy if some of it is carried out by the NSC. And some measures that have to be taken in a essentially secret mode, openings of negotiations, the exploration of new avenues. So that's the basic problem. In the administration in which I served was during the Vietnam War, and you cannot say that bipartisanship was at its height. And some of the people who had started us into that road then joined the peace movement. So passions were great. And President Nixon had a combative side. So all of this exists. But in fact, what we did is two things. As a matter of principle, we did not, or President Nixon did not permit that his staff members could testify before congressional committees, or could be subpoenaed by congressional committees. But we agreed with Senator Fulbright that we would have private meetings, that he would invite me and the members of the Foreign Relations Committee to drinks in his house, and that I would come periodically and brief them. So no formal record was kept of these briefings, and it was not a subpoenaed so that's, and we invariably briefed the leading members of the various senatorial committees. The problem was there was a philosophical difference, and the country was so deeply divided at that moment that it was very difficult to find a basis for bipartisanship. And how do you end a war that one party has started, the other party has inherited, and the party that first got involved had a shift inside that party so that they objected in principle to the policy they themselves had advocated. I don't say that as a criticism, that was the fact. That was the fact of the situation. But even in the Nixon period, we at least thought we made strenuous efforts to involve the Congress in our decision making. But the key issue really comes down in the continuing debate to what degree do the operations of the NSC become so pervasive that they really act like a department. There is a category of decisions which I think most would believe have to be done to some extent secretly, and to permit exploration, and but then when it becomes a day-to-day occurrence, that's when your question arises, whether there is still congressional control. I think most of the time the NSC has stayed on the right side of the line. But one could argue that if the NSC as an institution conducts a continuing negotiation that goes on over several years, that then it is really taking steps that ordinarily are under departmental and congressional control.
Henry, you've anticipated the next question I was going to ask, because there is a critique in Washington these days that the National Security Council has become operational, that it's taking on the activities of the departments rather than being a coordinating and advisory structure. I think each one of you probably dealt with that criticism. Henry's given us his thoughts about it. Steve, let's start with you then. I mean, how do you think about that? I mean, Sarah.
Well, one of the things is that part of the bargain about the National Security Advisor and the NSC being not subject to Senate confirmation or testimony and the like, is that it needs to be respectful to confine its role so it does not preempt the roles of departments and agencies or cabinet secretaries, who are the ones that are confirmed by the Senate and to whom slots and money is appropriated to carry the foreign policy. So it requires a National Security Advisor to enforce discipline on the staff and to be self-limiting, and particularly not get too public in terms of what they are doing. We learned in the Iran arms sales and the Iran-Contra the dangers of having an NSC that runs operations. On the other hand, I would say just simply this. I think the NSC has spent a lot of time developing ways of developing policy options for the president. I think there is a role, though, for the NSC, not in running operations, not displacing the departments, but to make sure that once the president makes a decision and sets a policy, that the departments and agencies are implementing that policy effectively. It's not to substitute for the departments of agencies, but it is to make sure that they are implementing the president's decision and hold them accountable. I think that's kind of a new frontier for the NSC and something that I think we need, because the greatest policy is no good if it isn't implementing and it isn't causing effects on the ground that advance the interests of the country.
Jim?
I think the biggest cancer in any NSC is when it crosses over from being strategic to operational, and we have to guard against that. It's not easy. Technology is a double-edged sword in this case, where technology allows someone in the NSC, if he or she wishes to pick up a telephone and call an operational commander on the field in Afghanistan, and that's a problem for every administration. That's not just one administration. As a Marine officer, I was on the receiving end of direction direct from the White House as a captain in the Mayaguez operation off of Cambodia. Well-intentioned staffer decided he wanted to talk to Captain Jones, and he could do that. And but that is the big problem, and it's one of the jobs I think the National Security Advisor and whoever else can convey is that under no circumstances will you do that. Under no circumstances, because once you open that door, then you do get into micromanaging and running operations, and that's something that that the NSC should guard against, absolutely.
HR, can I put you on the spot?
Sure. First, let me just say it's been a great gift to be able to study the NSC from a historical perspective, and then to learn from those who are here, and especially General Scowcroft, who's been just a tremendous role model and mentor for me as well. And so much of his work is very relevant to this question on emphasizing the role of the National Security Council in coordinating and integrating across all the departments and agencies to provide options to the president. And then once the president makes decisions, as Stephen has pointed out, to assist with the sensible implementation, execution of those decisions. And in recent years, for whatever reasons, more and more authorities have been centralized, within the National Security Council. And it did cross, I think, a line between a coordinating and integrating organization into an executing arm of the government. So consistent with President Trump's guidance, we have devolved responsibility and authorities back to the departments where it belongs and emphasized that coordination and integration role. One of the ways we've done that is with the time we saved by not calling up, Captain Jones or his equivalent. What we've done is applied that time to reestablishing our strategic competence, to think longer term, and to involve the heads of the departments and agencies, the State Department in particular, to play a foundational role in framing problems, in viewing situations around the world that affect our national security through the lens of vital interests, and then based on that framing, to establish long-term goals and more specific objectives associated with those goals. Then what happens is the principals issue guidance to the departments and agencies, which then allow them to get to work and to actually start doing things, if it's already within their authority, to meet whatever the principal's guidance is. And then we bring those decisions to the president that require his decisions. The approval of that framing, and then ultimately we deliver to the president an integrated strategy, much as we did, as many of you sort of watched us do it on the Cuba policy, which is probably the most public one. But there are signed policies on Iran, for example, which you'll hear more about this week, and I could go on and on. But I think what has helped us address this potential of centralizing too much control in the NSC, making the NSC 2 operational, is to focus more on the development of these integrated strategies.
Henry, I think when you were the National Security Advisor, you had a staff that was 40 or 50. I'm not exactly sure the precise, but I think it was about 42, 45, something like that. We've seen big staffs in the NSC in recent years. I mean, is this just a simpler question? I mean, more people are looking for things to do. They take on command responsibility. It's part of this. I know, HR, you started with the idea of capping. Could you all of you talk about how big a staff is and how influential it is given its job? Please, HR.
Okay, well, if you're Dr. Kissinger, you can probably get away with 40 or 50. If you're me, you might need some more help, right? So I'm reminded that the German General Staff had its roots in trying to institutionalize the genius of Napoleon. And so we should remember that you probably need a few more staffers if you're not Henry Kissinger. But we have made a conscious effort to reduce the size of the staff and to make sure that that form follows function. And as we devolve responsibilities back to departments and agencies, as we get out of really management of tactical issues, then we're able to reduce. So we have reduced significantly the numbers of policy people and overall staff. So it was over 400 or so at its peak. We're down to about 360 something now, and that sounds like a lot. Of those 360, it's really about 160 to 170 policy people. And the rest is the White House Situation Room, which runs multiple shifts, and information technology, those who manage the president's travel and visits of foreign leaders. So there's a large administrative component. So it's not as big as some of the numbers you hear talked about. What has contributed to the growth over time as well from 50 or so to 167 is the emphasis on Homeland Security, especially after the mass murder attacks on our country on September 11th, 2001. And so the National Security Council now has a blended staff that also includes the Homeland Security Council. Now, does that mean we can't get smaller? No, we can, I think. The emphasis is obviously to have the right people with the right expertise, and because of the coordination and integration efforts, the right personality a lot of times, right, to lead by charm and bring people together around these important issues. So I think we're at a good place now in terms of the size and effectiveness, especially of the extremely talented, as all of you know, the dedication and talent of the people on the National Security Council it's astounding, and it just makes you proud every day when you interact with your teams there. But it did grow for a number of reasons. It is getting smaller again, but the numbers can be deceiving in terms of policy people.
Well, we didn't start with a fixed idea of the number of people that should be on the staff. I think one of the problems is this: what do you define as national security policy? And when we started in the Nixon administration, we concentrated on a number of key issues like Russia and opening to China, or 4 or 5 key issues. And we left most of the others to the departments. Then gradually over time, the line between strategy and day-to-day policy got eroded, and so there was felt to be a greater need for White House supervision. And there's a reason for this. In the ideal world, the people who lose a debate accept it and march along. In the world that I knew, which I know has improved since then, well, in that world, the party that gets overruled tends to think it was misunderstood. And that there is a need to carry out the implementation as close to the original overruled point as you could find. So there is a tendency for departments to slide over into the preference of their members. And this is, of course, maddening to presidents who think they have settled something, and then it gradually slides away. I think this accounts for the fact that more and more spheres got but that function of which Steve Hadley mentioned, to add to policy formulation the need for supervising implementation, because very often the difference between success and failure is a nuance. And if you screw that up, then even a great policy decision can fail. So it wasn't just the desire to improve. And of course, I must say, from a historical point of view, relations between the operators and the conceivers were never better than when I held both jobs. Which actually was not a good system.
Jim, you brought up this question about how technology is changing the nature of the National Security Council. I think Henry, I think you remember. I remember you telling me that when you first opened a channel to China, it was a typewritten note that went through mail channels, and it took a while for even to know if it got there. Well, now everybody's sitting with a piece of machinery on their belt that's got more computing power than DoD used to have 40 years ago.
Now, our first channel to China on the Chinese side were handwritten notes that were delivered in Pakistan and brought to Washington by a Pakistan diplomat in a sealed envelope. And our reply was typed on paper that had no watermarks on it and came back the same way. So each exchange took a minimum of nearly 3 weeks. And the real gap in time was 2 to 3 months between these exchanges.
And so now Jim is talking, he's had experiences where it's, a battlefield commander can get a phone call from the president, and this is hard to run a National Security Council with that kind of immediacy. How did you deal with it, Jim?
Well, if I could just make a comment on the size, just to go back for one more second on the previous, because I feel pretty strongly about this. The size of the National Security Council is not what's important. It's what the National Security Council does. And if you look at the range of issues that the president has to deal with every single day, just in the 7 days since I've been gone, I know HR deals with about twice as many issues every day than either Steve or I.
What is your message to them?
Please be patient. Life is more important than property. Bear with us while we work through this. We want to keep people safe. That is the number one thing. And it just takes time to put that together. You've heard the kind of resources we have in the county. It's still a huge event. This is an enormous fire.
Do you have the information on the evacuation centers, how full they are?
I do not.
With how fast the fire is moving or has been moving, do you expect more evacuation orders?
I sure hope not, but I know as early as this morning they were still doing some more movement. So it wouldn't surprise me because I understand it's not under control yet.
Do you have to evacuate the jail?
We did not. We were prepared to do that. Alameda County was gracious enough to send us several buses, and the fire did get as close to the main office that we actually almost evacuated this building and almost had to evacuate the jail, but fire put a line up for us and kept us in so we could work from here.
What about your own home?
I'm very fortunate. Unfortunately, my home is fine, but I would estimate at least 20 deputies, or excuse me, 20 employees have lost their homes, 20 employees of the sheriff's office. Many of them I found out about the night the fire broke out because they were coming off the hill evacuating people and telling me they lost their home. So they were working through the middle of it.
Do you know how many people were evacuated?
I'm sorry, I don't know how many people were evacuated. Yeah.
Sure.
There is some searching going on. There's still hot spots. We're responding to calls and concerns at houses. I know some of them come up just because someone was at a place and called us and we ended up finding a body there. So that has been part of it, but we're starting to put together search teams to methodically do that.
Have you heard about flare-up in the Oakmont neighborhood?
This morning I heard it, or I guess it was last night, I heard it was burning in the Oakmont area.
Do you have the latest numbers of structures, homes?
I have no numbers on structures and homes, I'm sorry.
Sheriff, as far as the fatalities go, I mean, how soon do you think you'll be able to release identities on them, or what are the difficulties in identifying them?
I have no idea how long it's going to take us to get that done, but I would say it's going to be weeks till we get through most of that.
What do you say to folks out there that are looking to help out in the community?
Donate to the Red Cross. Take care of your neighbors.
A lot of this is speculation, but the death toll, do you expect it to climb significantly, minimally? What do you think there?
I'm very happy that we found 57. I also know how big this is and how much is burned, and I expect there may be a couple more.
How has this fire hampered your normal operations?
We are only responding to priority one, as we call them calls. So with law enforcement emergencies right now, this is our main focus.
This morning, the Vice President announced from Sacramento that the President approved a disaster declaration for the state of California. Do you know how soon help might come to your department and what that might actually look like?
Actually, what that does for us is financial assistance. We already have the National Guard here. We have multiple outside law enforcement agencies, Office of Emergency Services. The resources, CAL FIRE, everybody, we have excellent resources. Those declarations will give us the funding to pay for all that.
Do you know how soon you might get an influx of funding?
Oh, that takes time usually, but that's okay. The fact that it's coming is important to us.
What's the National Guard doing?
The National Guard is supplementing our troops. So some of the people on the street are National Guard's people. So they bring in resources, but mostly people, just like other agencies. So they can do search teams with us. They have other resources like dogs, things like that.
Yeah, yesterday, Office of Emergency Services said that disasters like Harvey and Irma have not, because we've sent a number of resources out of state, haven't affected the amount of resources that we have here to be able to help just kind of share throughout the area. I'm just wondering what your experience is with that. Have you seen a number of different teams? You mentioned the National Guard, but
I can speak more to the law side because I'm not involved with what fire's getting. Fire seems to have a lot of resources, so they're doing fine, but they'd have to comment on that. The law side, we've gotten absolute full support. We have turned people away because we couldn't use the number of people that we had from other agencies. And when I say turned away, it's not turned away for good. We have to plan 7 on 7, means we're working 7 to 7 every day now, right? Every deputy that's working is working. Every other one is sleeping right now. We're just rotating them. So same for the outside agencies. We bring them up for 12 hours, send somebody home for 12 hours. So we turn people away so that as the week goes on, we can keep running those kind of numbers, and that's what we're doing right now.
Just real quick, can you say and spell your name?
I'm sorry, I forgot in the very beginning, didn't I? It's Robert Giordano. It's Giordano. I promised, and then I lied.
It's just you want to go by Rob?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I spelled it. Let's go by Rob. Rob Giordano. Giordano. I'm sorry? Sheriff.
And you're in charge of corners on as well?
Yes, Sheriff Corner here in Sonoma County.
Has he recovered bodies?
Yes, we have.
That's the number of bodies you gave?
8 of 9.
8 of 9. On the burned areas, right?
Yes, these are in burned areas, fire-related deaths.
Can you give any indication of the circumstances? I mean, those people who died of, auto accidents, or some people were in their home. Can you give any?
No, my understanding, these are all burn victims.
Is there an idea how many people were injured in the fire?
I do not know that. I know people went to burn centers that night, so I know that
All right, everyone. Obviously, they have cut away from that press conference because now you are looking at aerials. No one has said exactly what we're looking at or why they cut away from these aerials, but needless to say, you guys are now looking at aerials from somewhere. I can't tell you where, but I can tell you that I will work to get that information for you. How about that? How about that? Cool. I'll let you guys know in a bit. Stand by. You know what, guys? We're going to just take you back to the event you were watching earlier.
I found that the best time I could meet with that team was Saturday morning, because that's the only time things got to sort of quieted down a little bit. But there's a terrific resource that's available to Nadia and Ashar, and that is you are pressed to have time to take the longer view, but of course we have a robust think tank community here in Washington. And one of the things that we did was come up with sort of 10 things that might go bump in the night and be a problem for us. And Peter went quietly to a number of think tanks and said, you know, if you would do a study on the long-term implications of X, I think I know some people in the White House who would be interested in reading it. So I think there is actually a real opportunity for using this think tank community as well as the intelligence community and policy planning communities to make the intellectual investment in looking over the horizon and trying to talk about some alternative strategies. It's a partnership that I don't think we've taken full advantage of.
Jim? I completely agree with that. Having the privilege of working in a think tank like CSIS, I think there's great value to asking the think tank community to take on some of the strategic issues that are coming at us but are not quite mature, but bear watching and thinking about. And it's just it's a force multiplier, and it's something that should be used, I think.
Please, just to add on, I think it's important, obviously, to have this focus, but as Stephen has mentioned, to organize properly for it as well. And so it's outreach to think tanks to bring in outside perspectives, and really what I'm doing is repeating a lot of the advice I got from many of you as I took the job. But it's also helping the departments and agencies maintain that long-term perspective and to help integrate their long-term planning. So what we did to organize is create a Deputy National Security Advisor for Strategy, Dina Powell, who is our main bridge into policy planning at state, into OSD policy, and brings those teams together around what we're calling national security challenges, so that we are ready to frame these problems, get guidance from principals that they've already been talking about within their departments. It's not a meeting that's held and we say Iran or Russia discuss. This is something that Dina has really led across departments and agencies, so we're ready for that framing discussion.
Henry raised a very interesting issue, which I didn't focus on at that time. I'd like to bring us back to it, and that is when he talked about the necessity of governments doing things in secret. But we're a democracy where ultimately policy is a public debate. And I would like to get you, how do you feel about this? Obviously, the government has to have secret channels where it can initiate diplomacy, but it has to be grounded in something we talk to the American public about. Henry opened the door on this, and again, HR, if you give us your reaction, Jim and Steve, and I'll come back to Henry. You want to start?
Well, I had a practice that I had no secrets from my NSC principals. There wasn't anything I was doing that Condi Rice as Secretary of State and Bob Gates as Secretary of Defense didn't know, and it was fine because that's the way the president wanted it. So I think that is an important piece, and we had the kinds of relationships where I was very comfortable doing that. I also wanted them to know what I was thinking and to get a sense of the kind of advice I would give to the president so that if they had a different view, they would have an opportunity to present the other side. I think in terms of the Congress and the public, I think one of the things we have to distinguish between is the thematics and general direction of policy from sort of operational and execution details. And I think, you know, the public and the Congress, once you start with thematics, they have an inexhaustible desire to go all the way down to the details. And it's a mistake. And I think what we've got to do is make that distinction. Thematics, broad policy, what's context, what's our objectives, what's our basic principles of our strategy. And then, you know, let the professionals do the implementation and execution, where some secrecy is required because, you know, your strategy won't succeed if the enemy knows what you're going to do before you get there and do it. I think that's a distinction we've lost, and we need to try to, a discipline we need to reintroduce into the system.
But one of the things that technology does allow for is very classified communications with friends and allies. And one of the things that I not only enjoyed the most, but I thought was very productive is engaging other national security advisors on a weekly basis with a 1 to 2 hour video teleconference on a regular basis. That had a very unifying effect on the big issues, and you could talk at a pretty high level of confidence. I don't recall anything that was ever discussed on those video teleconferences ever being revealed in public by them or by us. And it was, and more countries decided to adopt the National Security Advisor in their government. For instance, the UK didn't have a National Security Advisor officially designated until 2009, 2010. And more countries have since come on, I think. I'm sure HR has more interlocutors to deal with. But I think you have to be careful to make sure that when the National Security Advisor is using those channels, that there's immediate feedback to the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, and other departments. And that's a metric that absolutely you have to live by, because otherwise you have fragmentation. And the big risk for a National Security Advisor is that, you know, if he or she doesn't do that well, is that you become competitive with another department, and that's absolutely something that you can't tolerate.
The real dilemma is the more people you can bring in, the better, the more expertise you can bring in and bring to bear on a problem, the better, because it gives you different perspectives. It allows you to understand better the tools that you can bring to bear to help solve problems. But in recent years in particular, the problem with leaks has become a real challenge to national security. And so I think what's very important is that everyone that's involved in these sort of policy discussions understand the sacred trust that is placed in them. And they realize that speaking to the media about government deliberations is treasonous when it involves national security. And so then I think with that confidence established, the more transparency, the better, I think, in terms of common understanding across departments and agencies. And so that's the balance I think that you really have to strike.
Let me make a philosophical point here.
Come on, let's go, let's go, let's go.
All right, guys, as you can see, they have cut away from that event. You are now looking at aerials of a baby.
A car was stolen with a baby.
And an officer what happened was that a car was stolen with this baby inside. As you can see, the baby is now safe in the officer's arms. That little baby was on the run for a while in a vehicle with a criminal. Again, for those of you just joining us, this is what we know. You are looking at the scene of a situation where authorities have tracked down a stolen vehicle that had a child in it. Police were searching for a teenager who they said stole a car from a post office in Margate, Florida, with a 9-month-old baby inside. According to police, a woman pulled into the post office and left her vehicle running with the kid inside. When she returned to the car, the woman told police she saw what she described as a black male in his late teens entering her vehicle and driving away with the infant still inside. Police described the stolen vehicle as a gray BMW X1 with a Florida U.S. Army tag. As you can see, the baby has been safely located. It appears that that gray vehicle right there may be the vehicle that was stolen. That gray BMW there seems to be the vehicle that was stolen. Looks like the baby is safe. No word yet on if the suspect has been apprehended. All right, so that is the BMW, the SUV there that was that appears to be the one that was stolen. The reason I say that is because the chopper is zooming in and you can see what seems like a car seat in the vehicle. Although the car seat is in the front seat of the vehicle, and I think you're not supposed to put children in the front seat of the vehicle. Though I cannot judge, and I don't know the rules in Florida. All we know is that the baby is now safe and is in the officer's arms after the baby was essentially kidnapped when an individual stole that BMW X1. The baby is safe. No word on whether the suspect has been apprehended. The woman, the mother, was pulling into the post office. She left the car running, went inside. When she got back to the car, according to the woman, she saw what she described as a black teenager entering her vehicle and driving away with the child still inside. All right, again, you can see the officer sitting in that vehicle with the baby. The baby in the pink shirt is safe, which is what we wanted. No word yet on whether the suspect has been apprehended after a car with a baby in it was stolen from a post office parking lot. The mom left the vehicle running with her keys inside, obviously, and went inside the post office. And when she came out, according to what she told police, a black teenager entered her vehicle and drove away with the baby still inside. As you know now, police have located this small child, this baby, just 9 months old. There she is, seemingly relatively calm, not crying. Police have located the vehicle with the child inside, but according to our Fox station in Miami, it looks like police are still looking for the location of the suspect. Again, a 9-month-old was found inside the stolen vehicle.
The artist is dedicated to serving those that...
The baby in the car was found, but the suspect has not been located. All right, everyone. So again, this was in the Miami area. We are going to wrap up our coverage here of this car stolen with the baby inside. Since we know the 9-month-old has been found safe, it doesn't appear that the authorities have located a suspect yet, but they have found the stolen vehicle, the BMW X1, as well as the 9-month-old baby that was taken from a post office in Margate, Florida. We're going to move on now to our next feed. No word yet on where this fire is taking place, but these are live images of a fire somewhere. One day they'll tell us where.
All right, guys, it looks like our feed of this wildfire has dipped to black, so let's go back now to these aerials of the scene where the baby and the stolen vehicle was found. Like the crime scene investigators have arrived, because you're looking at an aerial feed that shows a van with some labeling that says crime scene investigation. So safe to say the investigators are on the scene, the crime scene. All right, everyone. Looks like we have the aerials of that fire once again. So I'm going to take you back now to aerials of this fire. We're still trying to figure out where exactly this fire is in the country. No word yet. I have reached out to a number of sources trying to locate this fire. But as of now, we don't have an official location. So all I can tell you is this fire is in the United States. right, everyone, it looks like we have lost our feed once again. So what I'm going to do is I am going to give you guys some live coverage of the fires. We will continue with our fire coverage here and give you a live report from KTVU instead.
Who live just outside the burned areas, thankful to have a warm, cozy place to call home, if not just temporarily, perhaps for the next weeks and months to come. I talked about kind of sifting through the burned remains of these homes. And, of course, you know, if you left your wedding ring behind or if you left the family Bible, something kind of very obviously meaningful, you'd be very thankful to find it. But I want to show you the one thing the Gregory family was able to pull. It's a concrete turtle. It's you know, you can see here kind of missing part. I don't want to touch it because I don't know if it's hot. I think it's okay. It's missing part of its head. But, you know, they said, look, we can recognize this. So at this point, Mike, when you're looking for anything that reminds you of home, perhaps you hated that statue ever since Dad brought it home, but now all of a sudden, because it's something recognizable to you, you decide to hang on to it. So out of all this, that's all that they were able to pull. But, of course, the search continues, Mike.
All it takes is one item. You know, you bring it back with you wherever you may be now, a loved one's home or a shelter, and then you just kind of hold it and you rebuild from that, you know, no matter how small or big it is, whether it's a photo or that turtle there. So whatever you can get. Yeah. Gassia, thank you. I want to show viewers now some before and after pictures from Santa Rosa. This is the Kmart off of Cleveland Avenue before the fire hit. And this is what it looks like now. The entire building destroyed. The Trader Joe's down the street also damaged. This is what it looked like before. And now after, you can see the building heavily damaged, the sign out front scorched, barely legible. And this is a home on Hadley Hill Drive there in Santa Rosa. After the fire, all that was left standing was the front gate and the brick wall. Not surprisingly, some of the businesses damaged or destroyed by the fires in Napa County are wineries along the Silverado Trail. That includes the Signorello Estate Winery. That is what the winery looked like before the fire. And now there is nothing left but burned buildings. Signorello is known for its Cabernet Sauvignon, but winery owners say they're not sure yet what they will be able to do about this year's vintage. Hundreds of fire evacuees are now at a shelter in Marin County near the Civic Center. Folks are being temporarily housed at the Marin Center Exhibit Hall, where they are being provided with cots, food, and water. As of midnight last night, there were about 700 people in the shelters there, as well as in Terra Linda and West Marin. No donations or volunteers are needed at this time. We spoke to one Santa Rosa family who said they are really in a state of limbo at this moment.
Still, you don't know what to do. You know, you don't know whether to stay on alert, if they're going to evacuate again. We don't know if the fires are contained. We just don't know.
The Marin shelter currently has room for a couple hundred more evacuees. Small pets are welcome. If this location reaches full capacity, a contingency plan is in the works for another shelter nearby. Still ahead, we are also tracking several other wildfires in Northern California. After the break, a look at the conditions in Mendocino County. And we're going to check back in with our meteorologist, Rosemary Orozco, for the details in this fire forecast. Fire burning in Mendocino County is now spread across 21,000 acres. As we reported yesterday, the Redwood Complex fire is blamed for at least one death, and the Sheriff's Department says 2 more people were seriously hurt. The fire is about 10 miles north of Ukiah. Officials estimate at least 75 homes there have been destroyed. Nearly the entire Redwood Valley is under mandatory evacuations. Animals from the evacuated area are being taken to the Ukiah Fairgrounds.
It's hard. It's hard to live through these incidents, and it's hard to see people struggling themselves to get through it, you know, and then being here and making sure that we have what people need.
I don't know where we would have gone. I think we brought 30-something goats here, and I raise registered Nigerian dwarfs, so this is a lot of investment for me, and a lot of my heart is in this.
There's no word on what caused the fire, but the Sheriff's Department says there were strong wind gusts that knocked down power lines. At this point, CAL FIRE says that fire is 0% contained.
I like security. I like my video doorbell.
Clear Lake.
My Bank of America mobile banking app has a mobile banking.
We just checked with CAL FIRE, and so far, 2,500 acres of burn, and that fire is 10% contained. Fire officials have not been able to give numbers yet on how many buildings have been damaged or destroyed. Mandatory evacuations are in effect for that area. Closer to the Bay Area, you've probably noticed how poor the air quality has been because of these fires. Doctors say it bears repeating that smoke can cause health problems, especially for children, senior citizens, and people with breathing problems. Fire department phone lines were jammed with calls from people worried about the fires close to their homes. Some schools called off outdoor recess and outdoor practices for sports teams.
We're making masks available to kids if they feel like they want a little extra support for the air quality. When kids are not feeling well, we're asking that they're headed home.
Schools also reported a higher than usual number of student absences yesterday. While the smoke is not as bad as today, officials still warn people with breathing problems to be very careful. If possible, stay inside, keep windows closed, and put air conditioners on. Recirculate so you don't breathe in the dirty air. NASA has released a picture of some of the smoke coming from the California wildfires. Here you can see the smoke pouring into the Bay Area and then off into the Pacific Ocean. You can see just how big these fires are from this image. Crews are still trying to contain the rapidly spreading fires this afternoon. Back in Sonoma and Napa, the issue of downed power lines and phone lines remains kind of difficult for people to get in touch with each other. We're joined now on the phone by Deanna Contreras of PG&E. And Deanna, I know you guys are busy. Your crews are out there working hard, trying to restore power. I appreciate you taking the time. At its peak, what was the outages in Napa and Sonoma counties, and where are we at this afternoon?
Hi, Mike. Good afternoon. We're about 91,000 customers out of power throughout our service territory. As you know, we're fighting several wildfires, or we're helping CAL FIRE in their efforts in fighting these several wildfires. But in Santa Rosa, we're about 50,000 customers, and in Napa, about 25,000 customers out in Napa County.
Okay, so this morning I was getting some tweets from individuals in Santa Rosa, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on because their home maybe wasn't destroyed. They're kind of in a nearby neighborhood, but they don't have their power. When do you estimate maybe power for those 50,000 in Santa Rosa to be restored?
So right now our top priority is safety and the well-being of the fire officials and the firefighters and our customers and our employees, of course. And so once it is safe to do so, then we'll begin assessing the impacts on our power lines and our power poles, and then we'll be able to restore electric service safely and as quickly as possible to all the customers who can be restored. And we just have not been able to do that just yet. We haven't got the okay from fire officials and city officials yet to make those assessments.
So people sitting at home right now scratching their head, this is not going to happen today. This may not take place till the weekend or even possibly next week.
Well, we're working on that. Again, we're just working with the fire officials to make sure it's safe, and then once we get the go-ahead that it's safe for us to go in and assess the damage, then we can start restoring power.
And then last question here. I know a lot of times when there's natural disasters in other parts of the country, PG&E often packs their bags and heads off. Do you have other crews responding from the state to this area to help restore the power or even further out beyond the state lines?
Absolutely, we do. We've had a lot of troublemen and linemen who've been impacted by the fires whose houses were burned down. So we've definitely been impacted, and we're getting all kinds of support from other areas. The company's bringing in all kinds of other resources to help restore power to Sonoma County and Napa County, and we're establishing base camps in Napa and Sonoma to do that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for the update, Deanna Contreras, Public Information Officer with PG&E. Wish your crews having a safe time out there as you try to restore all the power. Want to check in with meteorologist Rosemary Roscoe right now. And Rosemary, what's the latest on the wind?
Yeah, the wind generally light out there, so that's great news for the firefighters, of course. On the flip side, that smoke out there is just lingering. Mike talked a lot about the advisories in place and how to really just make sure to take care of yourself out there. This is a view here from Benicia, sent to us from Angeline this morning, looking across towards the Carquinez Strait. So a lot of the Bay Area seeing this type of condition for today, and with the winds generally light, it's not expected to change a whole lot. There is a smoke advisory that remains in place, and we talked about a spare the air alert. We talked about really just taking note and being aware of your surroundings when it comes to the smoke out there today. Here's a look at where we're seeing it at its worst. Of course, the North Bay. That goes without saying. That shade of red indicating it is unhealthy for everybody. We get into the shade of orange. Now we're talking about folks with respiratory issues, talking about little ones, we're talking about senior citizens. If you have asthma, you could definitely be impacted by this, that shade of orange for the coast as well as the Central Bay. And then you get into the inner East Bay and you get into the Santa Clara Valley, and air quality will be moderate depending on how strong the wind is, which again expected to remain generally light for today. May or may not see a whole lot of smoke come your way, at least not more than what you're already experiencing. Here's a look at the winds over areas like Atlas Peak and Napa and Santa Rosa. It's a variable wind, and so it's sort of shifting that smoke in all directions, and that's why just about everybody along the North Bay, Central Bay, and along the coast feeling it and seeing it today. Santa Rosa, 71 degrees right now. The winds are calm, 36% on the humidity, and that's some great news there. A lot better than what we saw yesterday. Coming in from the west, that cool, moist Pacific air. In Napa, that relative humidity at about 35%. As we get into the winds for today, generally going to be anywhere from 5, 10 to 15 miles per hour. Things start to change, though, as we get into your Bay Area Wednesday. One little check here over portions of the South Bay where we have the winds still coming in from the northwest over areas like San Jose at about 8 miles per hour. So by tomorrow, a dry front sweeps through and brings us the wind once again. And with that, the National Weather Service has decided it will issue another red flag warning for tomorrow afternoon going into Thursday afternoon. For the North Bay, it starts at 5 o'clock. For the East Bay, it starts at 11 o'clock tomorrow night, and it does include just our hills, at least at this point, with wind gusts perhaps to about 45 miles per hour, and those winds are going to drive down the humidity once again. Here's a look at a futurecast model. Getting into tonight, notice the winds continue to be light, and then as we get into tomorrow, the winds continue to be light, and then as we get into tomorrow morning, things are already starting to change. Santa Rosa reporting a wind to about 19 miles per hour, 18 San Francisco, 23 at Half Moon Bay. We get into Wednesday night, and the winds are still going. Santa Rosa 23, we got San Francisco at 15, and Half Moon Bay at 25. The winds are not expected to be as strong as what we experienced Sunday night into Monday, but again, that heightened fire danger will be back as we get into Wednesday afternoon and into Thursday. Temperatures for today coming down to mid-60s to mid-70s for most, a few low 80s for the inner East Bay. Here's a look at your extended forecast. Temperatures will continue to cool off as we get into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then into our Bay Area weekend. You know, when it comes to the temperatures, awfully nice weather these days, but as we know, this time of year, that heightened fire danger will come round and round until we get some decent rain in here.
I remember the Safeway opened last year on the final day, and there was rain in the area. And that was last October, and I know we had a wet October. No rain out there in the distance next week from what you're seeing.
I see none yet, but hopefully that'll change, like you said, usually by the end of October.
All right, thanks, Rosemary.
You got it.
As we have been showing you, the devastation in the North Bay has been heartbreaking for so many families. Here now, some of the emotional scenes captured by KTVU crews in Napa and Sonoma counties.
I looked up and it was golf ball-sized embers coming down my street at 30-mile-an-hour winds. Looked like something out of some Armageddon movie.
I went knocking on doors and ringing bells, but
this thing came. It came on quick, didn't it?
Absolutely.
I called my neighbor. I'm sorry to wake you up, but I got to wake you up in case there's a fire. 5 minutes later, Mike, run! It's coming fast.
With these kind of fires, it's unpredictable. You think you have 5 minutes, next thing you know, you don't have any minutes. We just don't know what's going on.
We had no time. There wasn't even really an evacuation. It was that fast. People just had to get in their cars and go.
And I'm going to wait up here. It's just so scary.
It's one of those things that you honestly never think would happen. And this is my childhood home. It is unbelievable standing here looking at all of this ash and like my bicycles, like everything just completely gone.
It's just unreal.
It's devastating. It is. It's just all I can say is devastating. I have my life. That's all I care. And my wife and my family and my kids.
My neighbor's house burnt down, but I saved mine. So
how thankful are you?
Pretty thankful. I don't know. I'm just trying to let it sink in right now. It's not good.
We bought all of the cases of water, the 25 that they had. They're really, really low on supplies right now.
Why in the middle of, this is a horrific fire.
You know, I want somebody to do it for me. And we have the ability and the resources to do it. We just have to all pitch in and, do what we can, if we can. I have friends that have lost their homes and everything already. So this is very devastating.
I'm lucky. My house is fine. My family is fine. My city is not. And it's going to take a long time for us to recover.
On the ground, the rims of this car here have melted into these rivers of silver. I've been getting so much feedback from our viewers, and someone wrote me on Instagram that means the temperature in this fire to melt those rims was right around 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. And I mentioned Instagram because I'll tell you, and Mike, you asked me this a minute ago, what's it like to be here in person? And it is surreal. And And I'm hearing from all of you at home about, hey, can you go two blocks down the way and see if my mom's house is still there? Oh, you're at this school. Can I get you to go to that other school that's 1 mile up the way? I am feeling overwhelmed by the amount of requests that we're getting, but it speaks so much to the way people are hungry and desperate for information, and then also really pulling together and relying on each other. It's that neighborhood feeling that so many people here say got them out in time. So they're the lucky ones. They get to come back and survey the site of their home and see what's left. As we see here, some smoke still rising from this home here in the Coffee Park neighborhood. This neighborhood was built in the 1980s. I haven't talked to a single person who says they do not plan on coming back and rebuilding. That is the plan for everyone I've talked to today. They all recognize it is going to be a very long process, months, certainly years in the making, but they all say they plan to come back, they plan to rebuild, and they all express their deep, deep gratitude, not just for their neighbors, but also for the entire Bay Area, sort of putting its arms around the North Bay and helping with financial donations, donations of pet food, and really just that feeling of we are truly in this together. So, Mike, I'll send it back to you.
Well, it's been a fantastic community in the years past, and it is today, and I know they're all going to come together and rebuild. I don't have a doubt about that at all. Yeah. Garcia, thank you for your reporting today. We appreciate it. KTVU's Claudine Wong was out near the fire lines yesterday. She joins me here in studio. Before I ask you a question, I do want to mention we do expect a 1 o'clock news conference at the Sonoma County Fairgrounds to get underway. This is going to be with CAL FIRE and Sonoma County Fire and Emergency Services Department, or Sonoma OES. So we're waiting for that to begin. As soon as it does, we will bring it to you live.
Hopefully get some updated numbers.
Yesterday, wow.
It was something.
Tell me about the drive-in. When did you know when you were getting...
Well, you know, the drive-in was interesting because we were going in and all these people were going out, and it was slow going, but you could tell as we were getting closer, all the people were trying to get out of the area as they were being asked to do. Yes, on 101, it was very slow, and then we got off, and there were so many road closures around there, it was really hard to kind of figure out how to get where we needed to go, and we went to several different neighborhoods. And I think what struck me was the amount of smoke that was everywhere. So you couldn't, you know, we've covered these before, and you kind of go to the place that is burning the hottest. It was burning hot everywhere. And so that really had us kind of trying to figure out which direction we wanted to go in. We were in the area of Rincon Valley. We went into this other neighborhood, and everywhere we saw devastation. Some places there were still houses standing. We have this video that we can show you. This is the Fountain Grove area. They've talked about this being you know, the place where the most treacherous and scariest rescues took place. When we arrived, that house wasn't even burning. It was the one in front of it. And then to sit there and to see this house that was doing just fine all of a sudden go up in flames. Then we saw, as we were sitting there, the aerial drops start.
We were waiting for those and wondering whether the conditions would improve for the pilot. So when you say Fountain Grove, people don't know it. That's on the west, or I'm sorry, the east side of the highway, because you can see the vegetation, bigger trees, because that's kind of the fire came down from Calistoga down the hills, and then started going into the canyons right where
and you're looking at, the fire was coming in our direction. So what we didn't realize when we had gotten there is how much it had devastated past that point of where that fire was burning, crossing up and over the hill. There was so much devastation behind it. They were trying the aerial drops to keep it from moving forward, and at this point where we were, our vantage point at that point was the police officers had stopped us, and they said, you just can't go in there because it's just too devastating. What ended up happening was that house you saw burnt down. We were able to go inside that neighborhood. It was on Hadley Hill. That's where we started getting a lot of people going, can you check my house? Can you check my house? There were still some homes standing.
They would text you? Or
they would get on Twitter.
They were going to Twitter to reach you.
On Twitter and say, I see you're on Hadley Hill. I see you're over here. Can you please? And we were able to tell a few people that their houses were fine. There were a lot of other people where you couldn't. We talked to one man.
Do you feel like the weight of the world's on you? And people are waiting for you to respond.
It is like
to them, whether or not they're
you have their address, and my photographer would go one way, and I would go the other way, and the entire time I'm like, please be there. Please let me just tell someone something good. And to see the numbers tick down and to see the, you know, in one corner, this woman said, I'm on the corner. And I said, which corner? Because on one side, the house was gone, and on the other side, the house was there. It turned out that was her house, and I was so relieved, but you know someone else is getting the other news.
Also not an area where they're letting anyone in for obvious reasons. But we did talk to a gentleman, he and his friend who live up there came up on a golf cart and they were just checking out their homes. His home was okay, but when we talked about the neighborhood, he did get a little emotional.
I know dozens of friends that are homeless. So now, I mean, we're the lucky ones, so we'll go back, clean up, and try to help friends and family. And there's just whole neighborhoods that are gone.
And you talk about going up and over the hill. This is what we saw when we finally were able to go up and over the hill, and there was nothing. So in that one neighborhood, just a block away, there were a couple homes still standing. I stood on the hill here on the other side of Fountain Grove and did a 360 around. I couldn't see a single home that was standing, so I was getting more tweets from people. Not one.
Just leveled.
Leveled. And getting tweets from people when they saw that I was over there saying, can you check my home? And I said, I don't know your exact address, but I don't see anything.
I don't see anything.
And that was crushing. You want to give some people something, and we just couldn't.
Well, I know a lot of people want to give the victims something and help them. We live in the Bay Area, a giving community, and people all across 9 counties are asking how they can help those affected by the fires. And I know the Red Cross says the best way to get help quickly to fire victims is right now a cash donation. You can go online to donate. You can also call 1-800-RED-CROSS, or you can text the words Red Cross to 90999 to make a $10 donation. Catholic Charities, Goodwill, and Salvation Army are also accepting cash donations that will pay for food, shelter, and medical care for fire victims forced out of their homes. Also, Facebook, I should mention, has launched its Crisis Response Center for people affected by the fires. There are now separate pages for each of the fire areas where people can let friends and relatives know that they're okay, as well as offer and accept help. There are hundreds of people offering transportation, shelter, and information to the fire victims. I know a number of people who have opened up their doors to their homes and have welcomed not just relatives, but friends of relatives for a place to stay until they can figure out where they're going to go from here. Just devastating.
People try to do what they can, and there'll be a lot of time as it gets organized, as we can just get these fires out. Then the relief efforts can also start, and they'll just start ramping up.
Before we go, did you get a sense being there, I mean, Fountain Grove or the other neighborhoods, just how intense it was, or must have been, as people in those last moments said, grab the bags, or not even the bag, let's just go and run?
I think it was the surprise. I think it was, people said, I got there, I got woken up, either some people started calling landlines, and then a bang on their door, and they saw the glow. There wasn't any time, and even the people who thought maybe I had a little bit of time, they just got in their cars and they took off. And some people said, I just saw the wall of flames, and that's why in that area, they said the police officers went in to make rescues, and at one point got trapped and had to wait for the fire to pass over them before they could get themselves and the fire victims out. And when you get in that neighborhood and you see how hot it was burning and how hard it was to get out, you can feel the panic of how quickly people had to leave.
Well, thank you for your coverage yesterday. We appreciate it. Just getting word from our producer that the news conference we were waiting for has been canceled, and that happens in a fluid situation, a disaster area that they're in right now. So our coverage, we're going to end here right now, but it will continue online right now.
And this afternoon, we heard some numbers about the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office releasing that 20 of their employees have lost their own homes to these wildfires, yet they're still out there on the ground. Many of them, sheriff's deputies and their wives and their family members out on the ground trying to assist their community. This is a community effort, these firefighters trying to get everything under control. And another update to tell you about within the last 10 minutes or so, the southern LNU complex includes the Atlas Fire, the Nun Fire, and the Partridge Fire. CAL FIRE is now saying that 39,000 acres have burned with those three fires. 16,000 structures there are threatened still, and more than 570 in that area have been destroyed. Overall, 20 agencies are assisting CAL FIRE to get these deadly fires under control. Ken and Heather.
Yeah, so many of the resources coming from right here in the Bay Area. Aliana, the sad news that came out today about more people found dead. Do we know anything more about the circumstances surrounding their deaths?
Officials not releasing the circumstances just yet. All they know is that they're having their death toll is going to continue to climb. They know a lot of those people. We heard yesterday fire crews saying we were unable to get into some neighborhoods. A lot of those victims we're hearing are some of our most vulnerable, the elderly, just unable to get out of their homes. So, but that's all we're hearing in terms of circumstances surrounding their death. I'm sure more information will come out as they get into those communities to actually see more of what happened.
Yeah, that was the case with that elderly couple married for so many years there in Napa County, just unable to escape. Aliana, thank you.
There are so many fires burning, it's hard to keep track of it all. So let's take a look at this map to get an idea of where all the fires are burning and tell you more about that. Aliana had some basic information, but we want to give you some more detail. Of course, down here is the Bay Area. All of these fires basically burning up along Highway 101 past Clear Lake. So let's zoom in. We're going to start kind of at the top of this map and show you what's going on here. We want to go to Mendocino County. There were 3 fatalities here. This is called the Redwood Potters Fire Complex right outside of Ukiah, between Ukiah and Willits. Look at this, Potter Valley, Redwood Valley, all of these fires burning in this area. Right now, 21,000 acres are burning in this part of Mendocino County and 0% contained. We understand 3 people lost their lives here, so that's that part. Also, it's worth noting, though, Willits is pretty much cut off with communications. They're having trouble with phones and internet here because of the fires. 101 was shut down between Ukiah and Willits. It's open now, but they're still having problems getting cell service and internet out of the Willits area. And we're going to move down now to Clear Lake. This is a big fire burning here. It's called the Sulphur Fire. This fire is burning near Clear Lake Oaks, right here, Clear Lake Oaks. This fire is 2,500 acres and 10% contained, so some good news there. Now we slide down into Sonoma County. You can see some fires burning here between Cloverdale and Geyserville. This is the Pocket Fire. It's off of Pocket Ranch Road and Ridge Ranch Road in Geyserville. 1,200 acres, 0% containment. This is the major fire that's burning in Sonoma County. And as you can see, it's a series of fires. This is a Tubbs fire. It actually started near Calistoga up in here and hopped over the hill, the ridgeline between Sonoma County and Napa County. All these fires burning along here burned right into the heart of Santa Rosa. So we want to zoom in here and show you what's going on. The fire jumped Highway 101 right here. This is where the Coffee Park neighborhood is, where dozens of homes were taken out. The Kmart, all those businesses right here on the west side of 101. This is Bennett Valley and the whole area around that we're just talking about, Oakmont, that is now has a new evacuation going on there. 27,000 acres, 0% containment on the Tubbs fire. And you can see all of this burning has brought all this smoke all the way down into the Bay Area. And then we move on to the Nuns fire. This is, we were just showing you some pictures right outside of Glen Ellen. Right here. Here's Glen Ellen. We're just showing you some pictures there. That fire is still very hot right now. 5,000 acres, 0% containment on that. And then we head over to Napa and the Atlas fire. And look at this. This is the ridge line between Napa and Vacaville. Vacaville is right down here. Here's Fairfield. This is Vacaville down here. This is all burning here. Atlas Peak is right up in here near this little reservoir here. The Atlas fire, 2 fatalities. We talked about the elderly couple that died. 25,000 acres burned here, 0% containment. So all of these fires burning across Northern California, you can just see how large they are, how widespread it is throughout this region. and we're going to have some wind issues coming up. Let's head over to the Weather Center with KTVU's Rosemary Orozco to talk about that. Rosemary.
All right, Ken, thank you so much. Yes, so improving conditions today when it came to the weather. That is going to switch back around as we get into your Bay Area Wednesday. And what did not improve today, air quality, and that air quality expected to be just as bad tomorrow. Let's check in on the current conditions where in towards the afternoon, the winds at this point predominantly from the west and southwest. Areas over Atlas Peak, you can see the winds right there gusting to about 35 miles per hour. That is the strongest I have seen in this area for the afternoon. Most winds generally light, reaching 15 to 20 miles per hour in most areas. Relative humidity is way up from yesterday when we were down all the way into the single digits. You can see Santa Rosa reporting a relative humidity about 29% with that southwest breeze at about 8 miles per hour. If I pull it back just a little bit, the lighter winds doesn't help when it comes to the air quality because that smoke is just lingering. And earlier today it was more of a variable wind. Right now Oakland's still reporting a bit of a northwest breeze. Concord is onshore, Fairfield is onshore, and then Napa it's a southerly breeze. So when the wind is variable out there, everybody sort of gets the smoke depending on which way the wind direction is blowing. Closer to where you are, you're going to be downwind, of course. But for the afternoon today, again, improving weather when it comes to relative humidity being up. The winds are down, and temperatures fell as well. Temperatures ranging from the low 70s to low 80s in portions of the North Bay and most of the Bay Area. But as we get into tomorrow, things are likely to worsen with the north breeze coming back. Let's first check on your air quality expected for tomorrow. Everybody from the coast to Central Bay, east and down into the Santa Clara Valley expected to have unhealthy air, especially if you suffer from respiratory issues. If you're in the North Bay, it includes everybody. So just something to be aware of. Of course, limit that outdoor activity and just be aware of how you're feeling. We also have a red flag warning expected to move back into place. The north winds are expected to kick up into the overnight hours. They will turn northeast at some point. It looks like into the afternoon, and that's when we are expecting the red flag warning to move into place. It looks like for the North Bay, it starts as early as 5 o'clock in the afternoon, lasting for 24 hours, and for the inner East Bay, expected to start tomorrow night and last into Thursday afternoon. So I'll talk about the weather pattern change coming our way and what we can expect in the days ahead coming up.
Boy, that red flag warning, Rosemary, is something that firefighters, residents, no one wanting to see. But thank you. Some new information, meantime, from Lake County. That's where a wildfire there is now 10% contained. About 5,000 people are under evacuation orders. Shelters are open in both Middletown and Kelseyville. That fire burning near Clear Lake Oaks started early Monday. It has burned 2,500 acres so far.
And we want to learn more about the situation in Lake County. It hasn't gotten a lot of attention because of the other fires, but we're joined now by Lake County Sheriff Brian Martin. Sheriff, tell us the latest on the evacuations. How many people have been told to leave their homes, and where are those people?
Hi, thanks for having me on the show. We've had about 2,000 people displaced from their homes, both in the incorporated city of Clear Lake and the unincorporated area of Clear Lake Oaks. We've opened up shelters both in Kelseyville at the Grace Evangelical Free Church and at Twin Pine Casino down in Middletown, which also happened to be the site of one of our evacuation centers during a previous fire. Those evacuation orders remain under effect. As you can see, there's only a 10% containment on our fires, so we want to make sure, just as the Sonoma County Sheriff said, we want to get people home as quickly as possible, but we need to make sure it's safe for them to do so.
And Brian, we're looking at images here of destruction in your county. Can you put some perspective into the number of homes and structures that have been lost due to this fire?
We're estimating right at this time at about 150 homes. Now, this comes on top of 3 years of, this is our third year in a row of very serious fires. Back in 2015, we had the Rocky Jerusalem and Valley fires. The Valley fire at that time was the third most devastating wildland fire in California history. Last year, we got hit with the Clayton fire that wiped out much of Lower Lake. That was, of course, started by arson. And now we're dealing with this again this year. So, over the course of 3 years, we've lost a couple thousand homes in our small community.
Yeah, and that's just devastating for the economy. So how has this fire affected things? And you mentioned the arson. Is it too early to say what is behind these fires?
It is. With the amount of fires that started simultaneously, I don't suspect any foul play. CAL FIRE is, of course, the lead agency in investigating those types of incidents, and they're working on determining a cause and an origin in all of these fires. They're very much overloaded right now as they're being tasked very heavily with fire suppression efforts.
You're talking about the difficult task for all of the firefighters there. Do you feel like you're getting enough resources at this particular time?
Well, I don't know that anybody's getting as much resources as they would like to have, but I think we all understand that with everything going on across the state simultaneously, there's a finite number of resources. There's just so many firefighters. There's so many fire trucks out there. There's so many air tankers, and there's only that many available. And everybody's jockeying for those resources. We, of course, would love to have more firefighting equipment and firefighters and air tankers up here, but we also understand that our neighboring counties and elsewhere throughout the state are in need of that assistance as well.
Well, Sheriff, we're out of time. Real quick, anything people here in the Bay Area can do to help out?
Thoughts and prayers. There's going to be time for donations. When time for donation comes around, folks, I'll tell you, during the Valley Fire, we had a lot of donations of goods. That becomes very problematic. That trying to manage all those items and those resources is very difficult. These people need cash donations, gas cards, gift cards. Check with your local emergency operations center to find out if a center has been set up for those types of things. People that lose all their belongings, it'd be nice if they could have a refrigerator, but a lot of times they don't even have a home for that refrigerator to go in, so they're just looking for some basic goods. They'd like to buy some clothing, some personal hygiene items, and so those cash donation items, those gift cards, those things would be very valuable and very appreciated by the folks that are really in need at this time.
Yep.
All right, Sheriff Brian Martin, thank you so much for your time. We know you're a busy man right now. There's a lot going on up there, and of course we're thinking of the folks in Lake County, as we are all the fire victims all across Northern California. Sheriff, thank you.
Boy, the need, it is just great all across the county, all across the state, excuse me.
We've landed in the middle of roads, and embers were actually bouncing off of the aircraft.
A CHP pilot who risked his life by flying into the fire zone to rescue people with those embers flying off of the aircraft. He joins us live next to talk about the harrowing ordeal.
Hundreds of fire evacuees are now at a shelter in Marin County near the Civic Center. People are being temporarily housed at the Marin Center Exhibit Hall, where they're being provided with a cot, food, and water. As of midnight last night, there were about 700 people in shelters there, as well as in Terra Linda and in West Marin. No donations or volunteers are needed at this time, we're told. We spoke to one Santa Rosa family who said they're in a state of limbo right now.
Still, you don't know what to do. You don't know whether to stay on alert, if they're going to evacuate again. We don't know if the fires are contained. We just don't know.
The Marin shelter currently has room for a couple hundred more evacuees, and small pets are welcome. If this location reaches full capacity, a contingency plan is in the works, and another shelter would be opened nearby.
Well, several people got out of the path of that massive fire in Napa County, all thanks to some daring rescues by the CHP. Helicopter pilots literally flew into the fire zones to get those trapped by the flames to safety. And joining me now from Napa is one of those hero helicopter pilots, CHP Officer Pete Gavitt. And Officer, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I want you to take me back to Sunday night. At what point did you realize just how dangerous the situation was becoming and that there were people who needed help?
Good afternoon, Heather. It became apparent pretty quickly. We started out just on a routine patrol flight, but another CHP aircraft crew and an airplane put out the information that there was a fire up on Atlas Peak, so we started up here from Oakland. And looking at the area from under night vision goggles, it looked really like a nuke had gone off or something, so we hustled up here right away and immediately saw a large line of fire already spreading. And we could see people trying to get down from Atlas Peak on Atlas Peak Road in their vehicles, but their way was blocked by a fallen tree or telephone pole, so that's when we kind of realized it was becoming dire.
And so this is when you made the decision to fly into the fire zone. Walk me through that process, and where did you land the helicopters?
Well, we made a crew decision that you know, it looked like we were going to need to evacuate these people, or you know, they were going to be facing something tragic. So we weren't flying into the fire, we were next to it, but we landed at a number of wineries and different dirt roads and kind of a trail situation to my flight officer, Whitney Lowe, got out, flagged some of the cars down that were trying to maneuver back up Atlas Peak Road, and then convince them that we were probably the most expeditious way out. Yeah.
Officer, just how dangerous was this? How dangerous were these rescues?
Hard to say. You know, we do a lot of training, we do rescue, we do medevac work, and obviously law enforcement work, but the conditions that night, really strong winds, really gusty, obviously a pretty fast advancing fire line, made it a real pressing issue. Surprisingly, several of the people didn't want to leave. You know, they said they wanted to stick it out, even though we were trying to convince them what a big deal it was. But I think we took out between two CHP helicopters, I think that evening we took out a total of 41 people, or 42.
Yeah, so many people that are alive today thanks to what you did. Before I let you go, Officer, you're so humble in what you did, but what were you thinking as you were heading into this area, and was there any hesitation at all?
You know what, man, we were just, you know, we weren't completely on autopilot, but, you know, when you see people that are facing something tragic, and, you know, that if something isn't done, that they're not going to have a good outcome, you kind of just go into rescue mode and kind of just make it happen.
You're sort of downplaying the heroics of what happened here, but appreciate you talking to us nonetheless. Thank you for what you do, and I'm sure those 40-plus people are grateful for your efforts as well. Officer Gavitt, thank you so much.
Thank you.
New Sky Fox video showing flames and smoke surrounding a building near Napa. We're going to have an update on the firefight in the wine country next. And almost 2 nights of firefighting, and there's still 0% containment on 3 fires burning in the North Bay. KTV's Jesse Gary is live inside the fire zone near the Atlas Peak fire in Napa County. Jesse, what's the latest there?
Ken, the area of land behind me has been blackened by swift flames that just blew right through here and burned everything. There are still pockets of earth that are still smoldering. Area utility poles and trees that are actually on fire. Now, fire crews with water tenders right behind have been canvassing this area of Soda Canyon Road, trying to ensure new problems do not erupt. If we have our video, let's take a look at it. There are 5 principal fires now burning. The Atlas Peak fire near me at 25,000 acres, no containment. An ominous dark cloud billows above the ridge line, which means mandatory evacuations still in place. The Tubbs fire has not grown in size. It still stands at 27,000 acres and holding. The Nuns fire is at 5,000 acres. The Patrick Carenas fire is at 1,000 acres, and the so-called 37 fire that's off Lakeview Highway near Skaggs Island, that's burned 2,000 acres.
We are still having active fire in all locations. We are unfortunately continuing to experience additional structure loss that happens due to the fire growth.
15 people are confirmed dead due to these wildfires, including Charles and Sarah Ripley. He was 101 and she 98. They weren't able to get out in time and died in the 100 block of Westgate. There is 1 reported death in Mendocino County, 12 dead in Sonoma County. Now, PG&E crews are out right now trying to restore power. This is outside the fire areas, but it is slow going as many of their utility poles have been damaged or completely burned away. Lines have been left low-hanging across many of the streets, and getting information out is a top priority, but cell service is a problem. We just saw an AT&T truck come up the hill, which is a welcome sight, but most of this area has no cell service or extremely spotty cell service. Comcast is bringing in free hotspots for several different zip codes in this area. No charge just to log on to that. And for those looking for information on their neighborhood, the Napa County officials say you can text your zip code to 888-777, 888-777, then put in your zip code into the body of the text, and then pertinent information will be sent to your phone about your neighborhood. As far as getting people back into the area, that's a much longer deal. We'll talk about that a little bit later this afternoon. For now, we're live inside the fire zone near the Atlas Peak. Jesse Gary, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
All right, Jesse, thank you so much.
And for more on the situation in Sonoma County, we're joined on the phone by Sonoma County Supervisor David Rabbit. David, thanks for joining us. What's the biggest thing you want people in Sonoma County to know right now?
That we still have an active fire going on, and there's still some areas that are areas of concern. So we want to make sure that we stay out of those fire and evacuation zones. And this thing is really serious, and the firefighters are doing a great job trying to get a handle on it. It's still, I guess, in fire parlance, a relatively young event, and we got a little more time to go. So we just ask people to really obey all the restricted areas and stay out of those areas.
Supervisor, you referenced areas of concern. Can you be specific on what areas officials there are really worried about at this particular time?
Yeah, I think I just got a Nixle alert on a Bennett Valley evacuation, so there's still some active fire obviously there, and some concern. There's Oakmont remains an area of concern, we know, and down in Sonoma a little groups as well, so it's still pretty widespread. A lot of resources are pouring into the county. We're very grateful for that, and very appreciative of all the hard work that everyone has put into trying to stop this firestorm.
Yeah, I understand there was a Nixle that came out that said 75 homes have been lost in Bennett Valley, and there's an evacuation underway right now in Oakmont. This is all on the east side of Santa Rosa. Do you have any specific information on exactly what's going on with the fire effort there? Are houses burning, or are firefighters just trying to keep the fire away from the houses?
Ken, I think they're trying to keep them away from the houses, but I really don't know. And that's part of the, just the issue with this fire. And I can tell you right now that I'm with Supervisor Gorin. We just went by her previous house, which is burnt to the ground, and she lives in Oakmont, and she doesn't know if her house is standing or not. Her house is right adjacent to Annandale Park, beneath some lovely oak trees, which makes it all the more vulnerable. I know that the fire came up and over the park and was pushing down into Oakmont. I think that was a concern, and they were really trying to make a stand there to save as many houses as possible. That's quite a populated area, so there's great concern there, and they're wanting to get I believe, as much of a handle on the fire before the winds will pick up, perhaps after sunset.
Yeah, that is obviously a really big concern as we head into nightfall. In fact, Supervisor, the pictures that we're looking at live right now from Skyfox are of that Bennett Valley area. This is Bennett Valley Road, and sadly we're watching another home be consumed. Is this a new fire, would you say, or is this part of the existing and devastating Tubbs fire?
It's part of the existing, and we had a briefing today, and it's a complex of fires. So there are separate fires, but all within the same area. Some have joined forces and are just calamities. I believe that might be called the Nuns Fire, coming up and over that particular ridge. At the end of the day, it's all happening at once. The resources are stretched thin to begin with, and we need more. And there have been firefighters on the line since the first hour, and they need to be replaced and swapped out. And I know that all the emergency responders are doing a great job. It's just pretty harrowing and so heartbreaking to have so many colleagues. We sat in the dais this morning where there were 3 people who did not know if their houses were standing or not. We have literally dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of county employees, let alone citizens throughout the county that don't have houses anymore. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. There's time to take care of that once we can make sure everyone's safe and sound. We have a lot of rebuilding to do. This is our Katrina, Oakland fire, all rolled into one, and so we have a lot of work ahead of us.
David, do you know if there's going to be another curfew tonight, and do you know how many nights, if it is, that would continue?
Ken, I think I would bet that there would be. I have not received any word on that yet, but if there was last night, given the conditions and the same kind of conditions tonight again, and especially in the fire zones, I got to tell you that the outpouring of resources is amazing. San Francisco police, 100 officers were here at 8 o'clock this morning. You see police cars from all over the Bay Area patrolling different neighborhoods and helping out our deputy sheriffs and our city police. You see fire engines and firefighters from all over the state and beyond. So it is pretty amazing to see all that people come out. I got to tell you, my hometown of Petaluma, unscathed by this fire. There are people lining up in cars to drop off goods, to volunteer, people just wanting to help their neighbor. And it really does, bring out the best, and we're just hoping that everyone stays and continues to rally as we go forward, and as those people come to the realization of their losses in a few weeks' time, that it's not forgotten, but we're there to support them as much as possible.
Yeah, it really is a Bay Area-wide effort to respond to something of this magnitude. Definitely. Supervisor, thank you so much. Please give our thoughts to your fellow supervisor who is anxiously awaiting to find out if, in fact, that person's home has been destroyed in this fire. Sure. as we continue to monitor things. Supervisor, thank you so much. And we're also going to check in on what's going on at Bennett Valley Road. KTVU's Tom Bakar joins us. I think you're on the phone, Tom. Oh, no, there you are. So we're looking at these live pictures from Skyfox, Tom, of one house that is burning right now. Tell us exactly where you are and what the situation is.
We're on Bennett Valley Road in an area that has been mandatorily evacuated. The police warned us if we stayed, we have a legal right to stay, but if we stayed, our lives were in danger. But I want to show you something, because this is pretty amazing. Look over here. This mountain is what you've been seeing from Skyfox. That's this mountain on fire. Go over here off to the right, and you'll see another huge plume of smoke. That's a fire behind the fire. Then another smoke plume just to the right of that. That is another fire. And then if we go all the way over to the right here, that is another fire. You basically have a sky full of smoke, which means that you have land full of fire. That's pretty amazing, because we're talking about a huge huge vista of land here that is essentially on fire. These are up in the mountains. From time to time, flames come up and they take some of these trees out. But this is a huge organization of fires that are seemingly starting to come together, and it's pretty amazing to see this. Now, just below, you're seeing Matanzas Creek Vineyard, which is somewhat threatened by this, because should that fire come down the hill, it will take out the parts of the winery and all of that stuff. But this is Bennett Valley Road right now, and on the other side, of course, is Oakmont, which is also on fire. So once again, looking across the sky here, you see smoke after smoke after smoke plume, and what that suggests to me is that there are quite a few fires in this area. And when we first got here, the only smoke you could see was right there in front of us, which is to say this mountain right in front of us. All this other stuff was not visible. Now, it may have been burning, but it wasn't visible to us. Now it's visible to anybody in this valley. That is the situation here, and I just thought that was something well worth taking a look at. Back to you.
So, Tom, real quick, that road, I take it, Bennett Valley Road, is closed to the public. It seems like right now, with all the fires burning in that area, there's no way to get from Santa Rosa, the Santa Rosa area, over the hills into the Napa Valley, like around Calistoga. There are some roads you can take to get over the hills there. I take it those are all shut down right now.
Yeah, well, it's interesting about this road is we do see some cars coming, but I believe these are people that have actually been evacuated from the area here because they've been told that this is a mandatory evacuation area, and so people are leaving. So we have seen a few cars coming, but this is usually a very busy thoroughfare, especially this time of day, but not right now. This road is essentially closed, so no need to come up here and take a look because they're not going to let you in.
All right, Tom Bakar live on Bennett Valley Road, where more evacuations underway right now as the fire continues to burn there. Tom, thank you very much.
Boy, it just seems like we cannot get a break. Let's bring in a former fire chief there in Fremont who knows all too well what these crews are facing. Mark Naveau, thank you so much for being here. Tom was talking about 3 separate fires when he looks over this hill. Is there a strategy? Is there a plan that firefighters have to when you're facing something like this?
Without question. They operate on 12 to 24-hour periods, an operational plan they call it, and they've got an incident action plan that they're using, which outlines priorities, strategies, where you're putting people, how you're handling logistics, all of that. But what the challenge is in something like this is not only do you not have a tremendous amount of firefighters, you also don't have personnel to be able to scout those fires. So you're trying to figure out and make decisions with a limited amount of information, which is part of the job. But when it is so huge like this, you can imagine such a widespread. A lot of times we'll put aerial reconnaissance, but that becomes difficult when the smoke's up there. So you're impaired by a number of different things. There is a plan in place, I guarantee you that.
The firefighters that are out there right now have been working so hard. When I was out yesterday in Santa Rosa, I ran into a CAL FIRE crew that had been up for almost 24 hours straight working. So that becomes an issue too. You already have limited resources trying to handle this. These guys can't work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you're going to have to rotate these crews through. So now we're getting into this red flag condition tomorrow night. What's that going to do to the resources, and can more people be brought in maybe from out of state to help?
Well, 2 things. What's taken place is, fire service and firefighters across the country are very organized in managing those emergencies. They're working with the National Interagency Fire Center in Boise, Idaho. We got North Ops, South Ops. So those incident commanders are talking to those folks. I can guarantee you there are hundreds and hundreds of resources on order and en route. It's a matter of getting them deployed. The challenge is going to be now we are hitting red flags, and that's going to be what, tomorrow? So as an incident commander, they're not only thinking about what they're doing right now, but I got to think about 24 hours in advance. What's this going to look like, and how do we prioritize?
When will those boots be on the ground?
Bingo. We call it zero impact period, meaning I've called for resources, but how long is it going to take before they arrive and are actually deployable? Now, the good news is with the president making a presidential declaration, that allows any federal department to be mission assigned, meaning that incident commander can call upon any federal department to be able to help fight this fire. Not just firefighters, but logistics, aerial reconnaissance. We were talking about police officers coming. They can access federal police police officers if need be. So the good news is that declaration is going to help.
Yeah, and hopefully that federal assistance will make a dent in all of this. I actually got a text from someone who lives in Santa Rosa asking me how much are the winds going to be a factor later on, and is there anything that I can do as a homeowner? I mean, he's really worried about his home being next.
Yeah, you know, that's a common question because it's our home, it's our security, it's where that's our domicile, that's our family. But what we want to say is that we recognize how important that is, but to stay in those neighborhoods and try and fight that without adequate resources to do it is really going to put you in a precarious position and potentially a dangerous position. And then what that does is that takes resources from other areas to have to go help. So as hard as that is, the best advice is to get to those shelters, try and get as much information as you can, and be as patient as you can.
All right, Mark Naveau, thanks for the information. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Hopefully we'll get those boots on the ground sooner than later.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks. Coming up next, we're going to go live to Santa Rosa again with the story of a couple. One of them, a retired firefighter, who they both risked their lives going door to door, saving as many people as they could as the fire raged towards them.
In regard to the fires, better weather this afternoon, but dry north winds will return for your Bay Area Wednesday. I'll have a look at what we can expect.
All right, everyone, we are going to cut out of this because now we're getting live aerials of the canyon fire in Southern California. So we're going to take you there live now. So we're going to cut out of our KTVU feed out of the Bay Area, Fox 2, and we're going to take you live to Orange County as soon as we get this feed in of the wildfire there. Stand by. There we go. Canyon fire coverage happening now. All right, it looks like we're having technical difficulties with this canyon fire feed. The feed is flickering, it's going in and out. Not the best feed, let's put it that way. It is very spotty. So let's go ahead and show you this instead. The wind, all of the wind issues, and you can see those fires burning. These are the satellite images of the area where the fire is. Back in Northern California, Santa Rosa, near Sacramento, Vallejo. These are the Northern California fires. Now we're going to take you back to Southern California as Skyfox Los Angeles heads toward the canyon fire. Again, the canyon fire coverage is starting now, but it looks like Skyfox Los Angeles is a bit choppy. Looks like you're now looking at a black screen, but bear with us. We are hoping to get you live aerials of the canyon fire burning in Orange County soon. We've been streaming the canyon fire periodically since it started yesterday. It's unclear why we're having such trouble with this feed. Perhaps it's just the connection, the satellite connection. Unfortunately, it does keep dipping to black. So stay with us. Your computer's not broken. It is dipping to black on our end. Stand by. Hopefully, Skyfox Los Angeles will get to the scene of the fire soon, and we'll be able to give you nonstop coverage here on News Now. Again, we're waiting for Skyfox Los Angeles to get to the location of this canyon fire. We should be there momentarily. You're looking at the live feed of our chopper in Los Angeles, well, in the greater Los Angeles area, I should say, as the canyon fire is not in LA proper, but rather in Orange County. The fire started in Anaheim Hills and quickly spread. It was of great concern. And while we wait for chopper to get there, let's go back to the Northern California coverage.
Alerting people that their homes were about to go up in flames.
K2's Tara Moriarty is live near the Coffee neighborhood that was devastated by the fire. She's at Mocha Lane and Keoki Court. Tara.
Yeah, Good afternoon. There are so many people out here with face masks on, and they are sifting through the rubble, just trying to find something that they can salvage from their past. Most of the people that you see here had very little or no warning that a fire was coming. They had to grab what they could in 5 to 10 minutes and get out. For Phil Leonito, a retired San Francisco firefighter, and his wife Terry, it was a tough day. They had heard reports that their neighborhood off Mark West Springs Road was gutted by fire. They hadn't seen it firsthand. They described it as a war zone, completely unrecognizable. Nearly 30 years of memories swallowed whole by flames.
Just everything was just popping. You could just smell smoke and popping, and it was roaring. I mean, the sky was orange.
Now, Terry says she received a text alert from KTVU, then a landline call from the fire department to evacuate. Her neighbors were asleep and apparently had no idea there was a raging fire headed their way. She started calling people while Phil ran next door to save an elderly man. The couple says that it hopes the city or county is able to come up with a better way to notify residents of a fire in case there is a next time.
What was frustrating to me is everybody carries a cell phone. There was no notification via cell phone that you're in immediate danger and you need to evacuate.
Now, coming up at 5 o'clock, we are with Leonitos as they visit their home for the first time since the fire, and they receive a special message of support from San Francisco Fire. That's coming up in about an hour. Live in Santa Rosa, I'm Tara Moriarty. Back to you.
Tara Moriarty, live in Santa Rosa. Thank you, Tara.
Okay, let's get a check-in now on that red flag conditions that we're expecting coming up soon with Rosemary Roscoe.
Yes, that will move into effect tomorrow afternoon. For today, it really is just about the light winds and the bad air quality out there. Take a look at what was sent to us early on. This from Benicia, trying to give you a view across the Carquinez Strait. But many folks, North Bay, East Bay, Central, South Bay, San Francisco, waking up to this, and it didn't get much better. We had a variable wind out there for most of the day and primarily onshore at this point, but not expecting the smoke to get any better for your Bay Area Wednesday. In fact, the winds are going to switch back in a north direction, meaning that smoke is going to come back our way from the North Bay back into the Central and South Bay. And with that, the Air Quality District has issued a spare the air day, especially thick over the North Bay. Unhealthy to very unhealthy for everybody. And even that shade of orange indicates you want to limit that outdoor activity. If you suffer from asthma, respiratory issues, just not a good idea to be out there. Here's a look at the current conditions. As expected, relative humidity is up. We're looking at Lakeport with 75 degrees and relative humidity about 23%. That wind coming in from the south at about 10 miles per hour. And in general, anywhere from 10 to 15 miles per hour is where the wind is. There is a stronger gust over Atlas Peak, and it's been like this for a lot of the afternoon with winds to about 36 miles per hour. This is one of the only spots I can see where the winds are that strong. We do have a trough that will be sinking in, and as a dry front moves through, right behind it, the winds are expected to turn once again. So for your Bay Area Wednesday, that north wind will be back. It could be early on and is expected to pick up as we get into the afternoon. Here's a look at tomorrow morning. Of course, this is just a forecast model. Santa Rosa reporting that north breeze about 23, Half Moon Bay 22. And then as we get into the afternoon, here we are into Wednesday evening, Santa Rosa still reporting a north wind at about 23 miles per hour. And as Heather mentioned, a red flag warning will come along with that. So dry north winds back into the forecast. It will include our North Bay Hills and our East Bay Hills. Wednesday afternoon, it looks like for the East Bay Hills, it'll start Wednesday night, and then it'll go all the way into Thursday. Here's a look at the temperatures expected for tomorrow morning. Upper 40s in Pacifica. Chilly 43 degrees expected in Santa Rosa. Upper 40s San Jose. And then as we get into the afternoon, temperatures continuing to cool. We have mid-70s expected for areas of the North Bay. Low 70s expected for the East Bay Shore. Upper 70s for the inland East Bay. South Bay locations will go 74 for San Jose. Along the peninsula, temperatures range in the upper 60s near San Bruno, mid-60s San Francisco, and then into the extended forecast. Air quality, of course, expected to be an issue for the days to come. I mean, we just have so many fires burning out there. It'll depend on the wind direction, but for tomorrow, the big story will be the dry north winds coming back.
Can't get a break. I mean, the winds coming back will blow out a lot of the smoke, but it makes the conditions so much worse for the firefighters, and that fire could really take off again.
Yeah, it doesn't. The winds don't look like they're going to be as ferocious as what we saw Sunday night overnight Monday, definitely. But just the north winds and the dryness is
but gusts to 45,
a concern.
That's still something to deal with.
Absolutely.
It's like a double-edged sword, you know. It does help with air quality, does allow for more aerial firefighting, but at the same time increases the fire danger. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rosemary. If your house is in the fire zone and you're wondering if it's still standing, we're going street to street to get you some much-needed information. We'll have details right after the break.
All right, for those of you just joining us, we are working to get you some feeds of the fire. Our feed from Los Angeles is quite choppy as Skyfox Los Angeles heads towards the Canyon Fire 2 there in Orange County. So I don't want to show you it quite yet, and we are waiting for our feed from Northern California to return. Stand by.
We keep hearing from our viewers affected by all of the fires is just how is my house? Our crews are driving the streets trying to cover as much ground as possible to show you which neighborhoods burned and which were spared.
Brooks Royos is in Santa Rosa. He drove south on Old Redwood Highway just east of Highway 101. Take a look at this story, and if you want to see more, we've also posted this at KTVU.com.
We're going to head down Old Redwood Highway here. And this is where they are not allowing any traffic through, mainly because there are a lot of power poles down. There's many lines that they're actually working on right now. You can see home after home right here in the corner of Old Redwood Highway and Mark West Springs Road. Off to my left and to my right, both sides of the street have been severely burned. Tree after tree, these power lines are down here. Look, we're actually coming underneath, Tony. Look at these low lines here they've marked with yellow tape. And up here is Chelsea Road, Chelsea Drive. We're going to turn on Chelsea Drive. No outlet here. This is Berry Brook. And it looks like there's a cul-de-sac to both the right and the left. All these homes leveled. I can't even get you an exact address on this, but we are turning on what is that, Darbster Street? Yes. Still smoldering. I see a grill out back there in one of those homes. Mailboxes are just lying in the street. Look, there's even Christmas lights in this tree here.
KTVU Fox 2 News at 5 starts now.
All right, everyone, we are going to cut away from our live coverage and wrap up this afternoon stream of News Now. We will have more News Now again at 6:30 p.m. Stay tuned for another broadcast then. We appreciate everyone who's tuning in. Or perhaps, you know what, I'll stream this a little bit more for a few minutes because it may be interesting to hear what they have to say. So I lied to you guys. Fake news.
At this hour, including new evacuations in the Oakmont neighborhood of Santa Rosa, east of Annandale State Park. Right now, authorities are urging people not to go back to see if their homes are still standing.
Please be patient. Life is more important than property. Bear with us while we work through this. We would want to keep people safe. That is the #1 thing.
One of the big concerns today for Sonoma County is handling missing persons reports. So far, they say they have located at least 57 people on a list of about 240 people. People looking for loved ones are asked to call the Office of Emergency Services at this number right now, 707-565-3856. Once again, it's 707-565-3856. They say many people may be having trouble getting in touch because cell phone and internet service is spotty.
CAL FIRE and Google teamed up to provide this map showing all of the fires that are burning in Northern California. You can see how large the area is that has burned in Sonoma and Napa counties in particular, but there are also major wildfires burning in Mendocino County, where dozens of homes have burned, and Lake County, where a mobile home park was destroyed along with many other homes. Overall, all of the fires have burned an estimated 115,000 acres across Northern California.
And we have live team coverage on the wildfires burning in the North Bay right now. We begin with KTVU's Tom Bakar with the latest on the firefight in Sonoma County. Tom?
Well, I just want you to take a look at something. If you look over here, this is the Matanzas Creek Winery. That's the Matanzas Creek Winery right there. Look up higher on the hill. This whole mountaintop is on fire, and because the winds are not blowing, the fire is not spreading very much, but you can from time to time intermittently see flames. If you go off to the right, you'll see what appear to be white clouds, not white clouds at all. That's another fire in the back. If you go off a little bit more to the right side, what you will see is what is a much lower looking cloud. That's yet another fire. And then over here, you can see what looks like a cloud with the sun shining on it right above the trees. That is yet another fire. The entire vista here is smoke from fires, and that means that if there's smoke, there is fire, and it's on these mountains, and it's causing all this problem. This road, Bennett Valley Road, is closed, and very few people are being allowed on it. Normally, these are people that have been evacuated and told that they have to leave, but most of what we've seen here are either fire tenders, water haulers, or police cars basically saying, if you have no business here, we don't want you here. And this is areas under a mandatory evacuation last we heard, and we think that's still the case because there's far less traffic out here than there was any time in the past. That is a situation literally in this part of Sonoma County, just with what we can see within our own site. There are plenty of other fires, as you guys have already mentioned, but the reality of the situation is this is still a highly active situation. On the other side is Oakmont, which is also in a huge situation with fire over there and a lot of property threatened. So we're going to pass it on to other reporters, but that is the situation here, and if this kicks up, we will certainly be back to tell you that.
Tom, a couple of quick questions. Have you seen any air support, and are you aware of any homes up in that hill behind you there?
Oh, there are definitely some buildings up there and some homes up there. We saw exactly, since we have been here, and this is several hours now, we saw exactly one spotter plane, one CAL FIRE spotter plane, and we saw one tanker that headed over this mountain to obviously another drop site. The resources are spread so thin, and even though California has the largest firefighting air force of anybody in the country, including the federal government, it is spread so thin that they have to go to the places where buildings are directly and immediately threatened. Because this is so high up in the mountain and there may be some outbuildings there, this is not a priority. That is obvious from just other fires that I've been to, where you see the planes coming in one after another, helicopter one after another, as we saw down on the 880 just a week or so ago. So no, this is not a high priority here, and so therefore we're not seeing the aerial resources. But if it starts getting any lower, then I'm sure we will. But at this point in time, that is the situation on the ground here.
Yeah, Tom, we're almost 2 days into this firefight, and at least 3 fires are still 0% containment. You've covered a lot of fires over the course of your career. Have you ever seen anything quite like this?
Not like this, where you're basically out of resources. Now, if you look up there, that's the spotter plane. That is a CAL FIRE spotter plane, former military plane that the state of California took over. And what that airplane does is orbit above the fire area, and it directs the tankers that are flying at a much lower level where to drop their loads, whether that be retardant or water, or helicopters most certainly will retrieve water out of ponds and lakes and things like that, and if necessary, even swimming pools. But at this point in time, what you see is this aircraft is simply orbiting, getting ready to give advice to the tankers as to where they should drop their load. But we have another problem coming up, and that is that the sun is beginning to get long, and the shadows are beginning to get long, and they cannot fly after dark. It's just way too dangerous. So whatever they're doing, they better do it quick, and then otherwise the aerial attack will have to wait until tomorrow.
Tom, yesterday morning I saw a 747 air tanker that was dropping fire retardant. California also has a couple of DC-10s that they've used. Have you seen any of those since then up in the area?
Not a one. They're probably being used in maybe the more pressing issues here. And remember, it would be one thing if this was just Northern California. Much of Southern California is also in this quandary. So there are only so many of these aircraft around, and they are going to be taken to where the situation is most critical, and then they will operate from there. As long as mountaintops are burning without homes and without people and without other kinds of facilities, they're going to probably have to let those go. But once something important is threatened, and sometimes that could be an array of antennas on the top of a mountain, that they will defend. But they will not just do general stuff, because they just don't have the resource to do it. If they had 5 or 10 times the number of aircraft, maybe that would be a different story. But we have what we have. The federal government has what the federal government has. And remember, a lot of these federal aircraft are also on duty for other disasters around the nation and even in Puerto Rico. So the resources are very thin. This is the thinnest I have ever observed resources in all the years that I've been covering this.
All right, Tom Vekar in Sonoma County tonight with the situation there. Tom, thank you.
All right, we're going to go over to Bill Martin now in the Weather Center. Conditions were better today, but we're looking at more severe weather tomorrow.
I wouldn't call it severe.
Flag?
Yeah, red flag warning. I wouldn't. Not when we're talking severe. That's what happened a couple days ago. What's coming next will be a red flag warning like last night, but firefighters will have a better opportunity even during this red flag warning in time coming up Wednesday night and Thursday, because the winds won't be anything like they were 2 nights ago. They're not going to be 60, 70 miles an hour. They're going to be 20 and 30 miles an hour. Still not good. A lot of fires burning. Tom Vekar brings up a good point, and I've been noticing this too. These are all the kind of the active fires just in the Napa, Sonoma County areas. There's not enough resources. That's why you're not seeing the big planes coming in and making the drops. There's not enough resources. Southern California has big fires burning. Not just Napa and Sonoma. There's big fire burning up in Butte County right now. Roads are closed in northeastern California. There are fires up and down the state. We just know these fires because they're close to us. So resources are spread very thin. We do have a big break in the weather today. Julie points this out. I mean, you see the arrows. They're going the right way. That's a southwest wind that has doubled and tripled humidity, that has dropped temperatures 5 to 10 degrees over the last 24 hours, and it gives firefighters an opportunity to start fighting the fire. I mentioned this last night. They weren't fighting the fire 2 days ago or 48 hours ago, 36 hours ago. They were just getting out of the way. Now they're actually creating fire breaks. They're able to fight this fire, and I suspect as we go into tomorrow night, Wednesday into Thursday, which is this red flag warning, firefighters will continue to have an opportunity to fight this fire. Again, what we saw, what got this thing going, is going to be not repeated tomorrow night and Thursday. It's not going to be perfect conditions for fighting fires. I just want to make the delineation. What happened 2 days ago and what's going to happen tomorrow night, the red flag warning, not the same animals at all. Still not good, still something to be concerned with, but not 60 and 70 mile an hour winds. So that's the story from the Weather Department. We do have a good hand. They're getting a good opportunity to fight today. I think even though there's a red flag warning on Wednesday and Thursday, they'll still be able to cover some ground. And then after that, there's further breaks. So hopefully we'll continue in this vein. Just know, because I know that was said, that what happened the other night, that was a 10 out of 10. That is about a 1 in 25, 1 in 30 year event like we saw in the Oakland Hills. When I come back, we're going to talk about the forecast, what you can expect here, and the air quality. I know you're noticing it. I mean, it's been horrible, and it's not going to get real great anytime soon. See you back here.
Bill, thank you. The fires burning in and around Santa Rosa are still posing a threat to life and property, and the danger increased on Santa Rosa's northeast side today. Many have gone to evacuation centers throughout the area, some not knowing if they'll have a home to go back to. KTVU's Rob Roth has visited evacuation centers and is in Santa Rosa tonight with more on the situation. Rob, is the evacuation center there packed?
Oh, yeah. The Veterans Memorial Auditorium is one of about 30 evacuation centers in Northern California. And as we traveled about, we found many people waiting and worrying. About 300 people are staying here at the Sonoma County Fairground in Petaluma. Among them is this high school senior and her family. Their home in Santa Rosa gone.
Think about, I think the worst part is thinking about how my stuff is burning my house.
Jacqueline Gutierrez says fleeing her home Sunday was frightening.
There was cars going through the sidewalk and it was just so scary, and all of a sudden you just hear booms going on in the houses. Just the fire was erupting there and so many sparks, and it's just so scary.
Now she's sad, especially for her parents.
And it's just devastating to think about the hard work of my parents for over 21 years, that when they came here to the United States, they were constantly working just for us to have a home and to have something that they never had growing up, and now it's just all gone, you know.
Jacqueline and her family don't know how long they will stay here. The center has an army of volunteers helping in a fully staffed medical facility and pharmacy. It's one of 2 in the area that is taking in livestock.
13 cars.
Among those here is this couple. They each evacuated from their homes in Oakmont in Santa Rosa Sunday, where the Nuns fire is rapidly approaching.
I don't want to lose my home. I have a beautiful home, and I spent a lot of time working on it to get it that way, and could lose the whole thing.
His partner, Nancy Young, is a retired interior designer.
Scary. We're not home, you know. We're like the people we've heard about who are homeless, and we've never been in this situation before, and it's frightening.
At the center, most people wear masks to help block the smoke. Children pass the time. Everyone is displaced. Lives are on hold.
You wonder if what's going to happen, whether your house is going to be burned down. You can go there tomorrow, there's nothing there, or you can maybe go by there tomorrow and you're lucky.
Now, if people want to help, the Fairgrounds Evacuation Center is accepting donations, anything from dog food to diapers. Others, not so much, so it's best to call first, check first, and don't just show up with a station wagon full of stuff. Frank and Julie?
Rob Roth in Santa Rosa tonight. Rob, thank you. We continue with our team coverage now with Christina Rendell.
She's in the Oakmont section of Santa Rosa, where there are new evacuation orders tonight. Christina.
Well, Julie, Frank, we're at the corner of Oakmont Drive, right off of 12. And as you heard there in Rob Roth's piece, he spoke with one of the residents from Oakmont, and that resident is right. This is a retirement community here in the Oakmont neighborhood filled with very nice homes. And what we're seeing right now is a large plume of smoke up on the ridge burning. And right now we don't see flames in our direction, but I will say that when we drove up about an hour ago, we did see intense flames. And I spoke to an officer who said that at one point this afternoon, the flames coming off the ridge were about 20 to 30 feet high, and that is why they issued this mandatory evacuation for the Oakmont neighborhood. We're told that about 15 to 20 people have evacuated. They've heeded that warning. That number may seem low, but we're told that a lot of people have already voluntarily left this neighborhood yesterday because of the fire. So right now we do know there are some people refusing to leave, but at this point, much of the Oakmont neighborhood is like a desert town, a desert community, because people have left with just one or two people refusing to leave. And if I just want to mention very quickly that flames have not reached homes yet, but if they do, officers say that fire crews are here ready to tackle those flames, and it seems that some homes on the very back end of that ridge will be the first ones to go. Of course, we'll keep you posted. Frank, Julie.
All right, Christina Rendon there in the Oakmont section of Santa Rosa for us. Thank you.
Our continuing coverage of the North Bay wildfire devastation in a moment. There is a firefight going on in Mendocino, including an entire town evacuated. And we'll go live to Napa for an update on the firefight there. Maureen Naylor will show us how to help, including the things not to donate, items that can make things even worse. Plus many stories of fire heroes, all coming out of the North Bay. All that still ahead.
Trust, peace of mind, and affordable luxury. Granite Expo has everything you need for your business and home remodels. A large selection of finely crafted stone and
All right, everyone, we are going to end the stream, but if you want more news, you can go to fox10phoenix.com, where we are live streaming our 5 p.m. newscast. We'll be live streaming our 5 p.m., 5:30, and 6 o'clock newscast there online. Again, that's fox10phoenix.com, and we'll have more News Now coverage on YouTube starting up again at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching.